Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Drawing Down the Stars. I'm Snappy, and I'm joined today by two good friends of mine, Skobie and Mandy. How's it going, guys?
Hey, hi world.
I was just gonna tweet to the world that we're going live, but
Oh, do it. Tweet it.
Yeah, tweet it. You can take a second, but yeah. So we have Mandy and Skobie, who are the writers of 3 volumes of satirical philosophy called The Towel of Minerva. And Mandy's been on the show now 7 or 8 times.
yeah, it's been
And yeah, good friend. And Skobie's always been in the background, but we're happy now to have Skobie up front. So this is going to be great.
Hey, you ever tell them like this is my home studio. This is where I make music and I make art. This is just kind of where I live, you know.
Yeah, and you have an actual large recording studio, like actual real recording studio in New London, and it's actually where Bad Brains recorded one of their albums.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
their
wow.
studio space has a lot of like really cool punk rock history in it.
Yeah. Well, I don't have that space anymore, but I had it for
You don't have to.
yeah. But anyways, yeah, for a very very long time, I had this really cool spot. Yeah, he said Bad Brains worked there. I believe Most Def worked there for a while.
There was a couple more
Oh, wow.
there.
It's a really gnarly spot and
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
It was called the Danger Room Studio.
Danger Room,
And this is called the Safe Room Studio.
That's cute.
That was during during COVID and the pandemic. I couldn't get there anymore, so it was like, well, what do we call this spot?
It's the safe
This
room.
is the safe room. So.
That studio was a communal working space,
Right,
so there was tons of artists in there all the time, and like bands doing practice and stuff. So like it was just a breeding ground for nonsense, and we decided to turn this into a functional safe space.
Yeah.
As those places are, I've been involved in those several times where you rent a space and with bands. Oh, it's always a pain.
I never really had too much problems. I mean, sometimes I'd come in and there'd be like, guts of a duchy on my keyboard or something, and I'd be like,
Right.
guys, come on, I don't even do this. Why is it on my keyboard? Like, But,
For me, it was always those guys staying overtime, or like messing up all your settings. You have your amp off in the corner, and it's like, why did you like grab my head, take it, plug it in? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But yeah, it is what it is. That's funny. But guys, we're here today to talk about your book series, Towel of Minerva. So for those who haven't seen the previous discussions, how would you describe the Towel of Minerva to new people?
Well,
What is it all about?
Yeah, well, I'll do it because I'm practiced, and then we'll give Johnny's perspective because he's unpracticed, and we'll see what authentically comes out. But the Towel of Minerva is it's like you said, satirical philosophy. It's essentially a way of preparing anybody for any attempt to do the catabasis. We haven't quite figured out the medicine involved in the catabasis, but we're recreating a lot of the philosophy. And satire has been a part of the catabasis message for since day one, right? So what we're essentially doing is creating a volume, a series of books to help prepare you for that, while also taking shot at philosophers that we don't like, while elevating philosophers that we do like, philosophers that were aware of satire throughout history, and philosophers that were channeling Lucian and drawing from Lucian. It's very, very Lucian-esque satire. We wear that right on our sleeves. We have characters that Lucian, in a true story, he took his audience to the moon. We took our audience from Mars to Earth and back. So we kind of took Lucian and turned it on its head. It's a little it's more absurd than Lucian even did, but we're also sort of doing it in the English language, so it's very, very barbaric, as opposed to Lucian, which is very, very beautiful. So we're doing ugly art as best as we can, and when you're doing ugly art, it takes you to the underground, right? And when you go to the underground, you run into a particular character there that you need to know how to get through and get past to get back up. And that character is Cerberus, right? So the Cerberus is so important to the mystery. You need to understand how to get past Cerberus. Otherwise, you're going to have no idea. And if you're not even prepared to know that Cerberus is down there, like some people who have never read Lucian and came out on live podcasts and admit that they'd never read Lucian, but yet they have a PhD in this stuff, you're admitting that you're entirely unqualified to be able to have any opinion on any of this stuff.
Who are you talking about?
Dan McCallum was McClown. Yeah, he was just on Danny Jones' podcast, and he admitted that he had never read Lucian. And I'm thinking, like, how is that possible, Danny? You're so sloppy to just get suckered into admitting that you've never read Lucian. It's absurd that like even anybody can get a PhD in anything related to Greek and have never read Lucian. Should be required reading for anybody that has read anything in Greek. Because right, it's necessary. It's necessary reading. So I read Lucian when I was 13. What is this guy's excuse? He's got a PhD and he's criticizing other people that that understand this Greek stuff, and he doesn't even know one of the most relevant sources of the entire thing. How is that even possible? How have you never read the guy who invented science fiction? The guy who invented science fiction was Lucian. The guy who coined the term esoteric was Lucian. But this guy, Danny, can go around talking all this nonsense about the Bible and have never read Lucian. It's insane. It's absolutely bizarre to me. Lucian makes fun of Christians. He makes fun of them. And this guy's never read him. Oh, and Lucian, he was a cynic. So, hey, there you go. So essentially what we did with this book was we invented an entire school of philosophy called the Cerberesian School of Cynicism. And we take our audience through the trifold time, which is very, very important, past, present, and future. So we're not only preparing you for catabasis now, we're preparing you for past catabasis and future catabasis all at the same time. And if you don't have ears to hear, a lot of this is going to fall, completely flat. And a lot of the jokes are going to fall completely flat. And that's part of the point. Part of the point is to demonstrate that you're not prepared yet. Right? And that's really what we're doing in our book. And the ironic part is my brother has no idea what any of this stuff means. No. He's just a diatribe scribe where I'm dictating all of this stuff to him and I'm just outlining all of it like in the most Dionysian possible way. And he's channeling the most Apollonian possible to create the trifold time. And we're also essentially using proving that hyperstition is real. And we're proving that everybody who has attempted to do hyperstition failed at doing hyperstition, right? They completely failed at it because they weren't doing hyperstition, they were doing hypostition, right? They had an obsession with the past and they were trying to recreate the past instead of being forward thinking, right? So we were so good at this hyperstitial ritual that we created in the Safe Room studio that we received a transmission from Mars in the future and through this character called Arcturus. Arcturus actually communicates and dictates the Towel of Minerva to me, and Johnny just writes it down. So none of this book is original to me or original to us. It's Arcturus that is dictating a lot of this. And part of the fun part about it is that, Arcturus being the witty, future cynic on Mars, he's telling all this story from his perspective. And we have to use our barbaric language to try to recreate it and to put it into something that our people on, right now in the future can understand. So we're playing with past, present, and future and hyperstition, the hyperstitial rituals that a lot of these people attempted to create in the 90s, they all failed and we completed them. We're so good at it that we have communicated with Arcturus and Sentinel Vega on Mars. They communicated their story back to us and they attempted to send it to us in its entirety, but they sent it too far back into the past. And ironically, to their perspective, it was only 1%. So it was very, very, very close. And that book in its entirety is what we have now as the Voynich manuscript. So anybody who has contributed anything to our book has also contributed to the Voynich manuscript that already exists. So anything that, they're inspired to write, Arcturus is channeling it through them, and it's already existed in the Voynich manuscript. So if you have contributed, you can get yourself a copy of the Voynich manuscript and find your work in there. It already exists. So we've proven hyperstition and trifold time.
Amazing.
And now we're going to have Johnny try to explain the book.
Start by telling us what the Towel of Minerva even is, Johnny.
Well, Minerva was a queen, right?
Sorry.
Hold on.
It's a metaphor.
Minerva is
No,
the Latin name for the goddess Athena.
Yeah, Athena, right? Yeah. So
Yes.
what you're telling me is the Romans stole a bunch of stories and renamed them, and you're making a joke based off of Minerva and her towel. And they say she's a virgin, which we all know is probably not true. So is her towel a like sex blanket, or is it a? See,
Okay.
this is where we have it. This is
I
all.
thought it was a menstruation product.
That's
is
what I'm
it?
saying. Maybe it's a towel that catches menstruation. Does it catch other fluids? We don't know. I don't know.
What are you talking about?
I don't know. It's a towel. What's the towel for? This is this is called a volley.
Yeah, no, I'll catch that one. So the towel of Minerva is a metaphor, right? If you ever see AI and you're listening to something and you know that it's artificially generated,
Yeah,
it has this way of saying like the fabric of reality and the tapestry of existence and listening to the esoteric realm of the enigmatic, right? It's that gibberish that AI creates. So essentially what I did was took a word, a classic line from Hegel, flipped it to make that metaphor for what that AI generated tapestry is. So the tapestry of reality, so it's the Towel of Minerva. And the name came from Hegel's famous line where he says, the owl of Minerva flies at dusk. Right? Which is essentially, philosophy philosophizes after the fact.
Yes.
So what we did is create a metaphor inspired by a Hegel line. And Hegel is one of the most famous...
Your hypostition nonsense, too.
Yeah. See, so they're doing hypostition, where we're saying, essentially, philosophy can philosophize before the fact. It can philosophize in the future, if it understands trifold time. If it doesn't understand trifold time authentically by interacting with Cerberus, then you're not actually doing trifold time, right? You're doing something else. You're doing some illusion of trifold time. And it's really only dual time, present and past, right? The future is very hard to philosophize about. Most people who tried to make predictions about the future, they all fail. Agreed. It's the end is near, the end is near, the end is near. We're making fun of that guy, right?
Chicken Little.
Yeah. The sky is falling, right? We're making fun of all of that, and we put the metaphor together for that because the Towel of Minerva, the metaphor extends into the future. Does that make sense?
I love it.
All right.
Turkey.
And turkey.
So go ahead.
Terry.
You first. I was gonna go on a weird tangent.
I was just going to say, so how did this come about then? How did you guys start collaborating to write the book?
Oh, he literally goes, "Hey, Johnny, I want to write a book." And I'm like, "What the fuck do you mean you want to write a book, dude?" And so he goes, "I want," and he can break it down later, but he goes, "Oh, I want a bunch of stuff from my friends and contributors and people I like, and I want to include stuff. Then I want the middle to be my section where I really put my information and my thoughts down. And then at the end, I want to just kind of really just rant." And I said, "Okay, cool. I don't know what the fuck you want." I literally had no idea, one, how to write a book. How do you publish it? How do you even put it on paper, right? How do you make it a physical thing, right? And he just looks at me and goes, "You'll figure it out." And I go, "What do you mean I'll figure it out?" And because he really thinks that I could just figure it out. Well, I watched a ton of videos on YouTube. I watched this person, that person. How do you put a book together? How do you Amazon publish, which is what we decided to go through, because that was I don't want to say it's the easiest, but it's honestly the most
user-friendly.
Yes, the most user-friendly start to finish, which volume 1, when I put it together, because they ask you when you want to put it out, right? Like you choose a date, and they give you a time window of when you need to give them the last manuscript and upload it and all that stuff. And the night of, I am up till almost 2 a.m, because the format that I wrote it in, which was just me like, oh, I like this font, I like this picture thing or whatever, doesn't match what they want. They have their own specific fonts and styles they want everything in. And I go to upload it. They go, oh, no, this is rejected. And I go, what the fuck? And then this is like 10 o'clock, it gets rejected. And I am up till 2 or 3 in the morning formatting it their way because they have it right on their website and I didn't even see it. It's like, hey, use this template. Oh, great. Here's your template. So I had to take the whole book, which is 99 pages, which sounds like a lot. But I mean, once you get going, it's not too bad. But I had to reformat the whole thing and then upload it. And they accepted it. And I was just like, holy shit. All right, let's save that as a template next time. And then from there, we just kind of build each volume off of the last volume. And I have all my markups somewhere. Try to make sure I don't repeat things. And we make sure, oh, this picture's replaced with that one. This one's, as he says, Apollonian, and I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know what that meant. He called me, Johnny, you're so Apollonian. Is everything's got? I have no idea. I have a structure, and it needs to be done this way. And once it's done, we can, move on to the next thing. But yeah, it's a lot of fun too. This sounds like complaining. It's not. I've had to learn so much to put this thing out. I had no idea. Literally, he just came to me, I want to say almost a year to the day, he's like, this time last summer, he goes, hey, I want to put a book out. I was like, what? You could just do that? I don't know. It used to be you have to like put your
get published or get a publisher.
You used to have to present your idea, have enough information together and present it for them to want to give you money to do it and all that stuff. Now anyone can write a book and put it out tomorrow. It is easy is not the word. It's so simple that if you put the forethought through, you could write a book tomorrow. It's incredible how easy it is. Wow. That's what I have to say to it.
It came out of my the way that I approach making rap music as well, the satirical approach to it. Yeah. Right. When I told my brother 6 years ago, I said, I want to do this Mandy Moorehol like music project thing where, I rap in 3 voices. Right. And it's hard to explain the Cerberesian thing that's going on with it. Why do I alter my voice to sound demonic and all of that stuff? And it's like, I had to explain to them, like, we're doing 3 different voices all simultaneously. One of them is the past, the present, and the future. And, it affords me the opportunity to rap before the beat, on the beat, and past the beat, and get creative with that, with, the way that I do things. And essentially what I'm doing with the book series is explaining a lot of the influence behind my music and how it's not just absurd nonsense. It's actually, there's actually thought behind it. Like my rapping is an embodiment of Cerberus, but like, what the hell does that mean? Right. It's more than just I'm rapping as a 3-headed dog. Like I'm not a clown. I'm a satirist, right? We're thinking about ideas here. We're not thinking about objects. And it's ironic that, my brother's obsession with these ideas is to, turn them into an object. And it's like, it's this Apollonian Dionysian thing that we're really demonstrating, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Oh, you make sense. But I think a key thing I want to point out to our audience about all of this that will make people understand what you're about is that you're really kind of, like you were saying, you're imitating these kind of mystery schools and these mystery type dialogues. But the essential feature of the catapathesis that you've been talking about is this idea is that you have to die before you die so that when you die, you don't die.
Yep. And he wrote that lyric, I want to say maybe 2 years ago. I could look it up, but he wrote it. I'm recording it.
It wasn't original to me. It's from it's written on something.
I realize that now, yeah. But when you wrote it, I was like, oh, it's super witty. By the way, I want you to know how offensive it was that he came to me one day and just goes, I want to rap. And Snappy, I have been rapping since high school. I've been rapping. My first performance was in 2005. This was something I always wanted to be, right? Before there was 8 Mile and you had that movie where everyone saw him riding on the school bus and writing lyrics. That was me, right? Like that's what I did. And I just always wanted to be a rapper. And yes, I was highly inspired by Eminem. But one day he comes to me and he just goes, "I want to rap," and I go, "The fuck do you mean you just want to rap? Like you know, like you just want to like make fun of my art craft that I've been, you know, that I hold so true to me." And he goes, "Yeah,
Also, to put it in context, Mandy beforehand was a hardcore musician, like
hard, yeah, yeah,
the
good,
other
thank you, yeah, that,
very near opposite of hip
yeah,
hop
yeah,
in
yeah,
some ways.
thank
Same
you."
attitude, but completely different approach.
Well, and a lot of people don't make that connection. It is absolutely the same attitude. It's the same approach. It's and some people would describe like different styles of rap as really just like you're pretending to be like percussion over top of a music, right? Like your voice is another percussion instrument. Like you're like you're trying to match the percussion. Anyways, but yeah, it was super offensive for him to just be like, I just want to rap. And on top of that, you know, he would come over and he'd use my studio and he's like, I want to learn how to produce on too, which is my other, like you're really hitting at my thumps, you know what I mean? Like these are my things. Rap and producing are that's my life. And he just, I want to do it. And I'm like, okay. I met it with resistance, but then I started really leaning into it. And he would come up with shit that I'm like, what the fuck did you come up with that? Like that one line with the die before you die so you don't die, and I was like, what the fuck is that? That's super cool. It's very witty. It flowed really well.
It has the percussive thing about it that you
Yeah,
really
yeah.
like. If you die before you die, you won't die when you die.
Right,
It's
yeah.
bop, 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 bop.
Yeah.
It's very in your.
Anyways,
And I rap that on time too.
but he's also put out, God, so many songs too, and it's incredible how prolific he's been as a musician, not just in the hardcore space, but as a rapper. It's I at some point I was like, all right, you really are doing this. Let's actually lean into it, you know, because I thought it was, you know, he's a cynic, and I didn't know what that was until
You thought he made it was disingenuous.
I thought he
right?
was being a fucking prick and being like, oh, I could rap
Yeah.
too. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
what it took me 3 minutes to explain that. But yeah, it's I thought he was being a prick in the way he was approaching it. But really, he's really good at it. And I sometimes he sends me lyrics. I'm like, where did you come up with that? Like, that's good. Like, you know.
Yeah, that's wild. It's fun.
But the way that it all it comes into the book the same way though. Like he just comes up with these ideas, and I go, all right, let's put it down before you forget it. And he goes, that's what you're for. And I literally how many nights we've spent just him diatribing was eventually what we came up with the term. Was I'm literally just writing it down. I've got notes over here. I still have some of them somewhere, just writing it down, because he'll just throw stuff out and I go, I don't know what you just said. I'm gonna write it down. And then in the morning I look it over and I go, oh, what is all this? Like, how do I format it? How do I make it which was one of the things we bumped heads with for a while, was because I'm trying to format it and make it legible and readable and really like you know, you pick it up and it's the way that the paragraphs are indented and things and stuff like that. As the volumes have gone on, I've started to play with it more, because sometimes when you copy paste things, it lands on the page funny. And like a good example is page, who is that? Series 21. Sorry, is this the right copy? Yeah, Series 21's picture, like the way we copy and pasted it on.
Oh, the one he wrote the haiku, right?
Yeah, he wrote a haiku.
Wow. Yeah, the
underneath
haiku.
it.
All of the words are all. It's almost like like
the way it
a
falls.
staircase.
Arcane's Folly page.
Yeah, it's a staircase to the underworld. And like when you copied the format over, it didn't. It got all screwed up. And I was like, keep it that way. Perfect.
There we go.
You see, it makes
you see how it kind of falls off the page.
Yeah.
So when I copy pasted it from what he sent me, it just landed like that. And volumes 1 or 2, I would have been very like, nah, man, it's got to be, you know, it's got to be central or centered or left justified. And he goes, no, it looks like a stairway to hell. And I said, fuck it, let's run with it. It kind of looked, I guess you're right. Let's see it. And the more I could only imagine what volume 50 looks like, but the more we play with his style and me, I'm getting easier and easier to like, all right, let's just throw it in, see what happens, and go with it. And
Hail
know,
Mary.
and
This also brings up another central feature of these books, which is something that's quite interesting, is that it is really a school in that you have a series of collaborators across all 3 volumes. You know, some of them were close personal friends, former bandmates that Mandy talked about, but also there's been just many people who've come in over all the volumes. You guys want to comment on that and like how that works? And
who was in volume 1? He was on your stream last night, right?
Graham.
Yeah, Graham was in the volume 1, and he was one of the first collaborators. And Matt sorry, Mandy, my bad.
Give away my government name.
Slipped the government. Mandy sent me a picture, and it's a noose, and I was like, what? We're just gonna put a noose in the book? Like, I don't understand. This was very early. He says, "Oh yeah, you put the picture in with his name underneath it, and this is a contribution." And the only thing I could understand to make a comparison to was this art book that I used to read called Juxtaposition. Juxtapose.
The magazine.
It was a magazine called Juxtapose, and I said, "Are you trying to do a magazine?" And he says, "No, I want to do a book." And I said, "A book?" Magazine, like so this is like a hybrid book magazine periodical thing, right? We've put it out every season. We try to be super witty about the dates, you know, and I try really, really hard to stick to the table of contents to keep each person, if they recontribute, in the same spot. If I can do it, I want to keep them in the same position in the table of contents as they were on the last one. It's like a puzzle to me, you know what I mean? Like, but yeah, I mean, we're open to anything. I have not yet met anyone who, and this is not true in the music world, I have not met anyone who has contributed to this series that has been off-putting. You know what I mean? Been hard to work with. You know, sometimes when you're working on a song and somebody's like, "I don't like this, I don't like that," and you can never get
a lot of egos in music.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's egos. I think it's
it's egos, because what you're finding is that a lot of these people have experienced ego death. So when it comes to contributing to something like this, they're like, "Oh yeah, like that's amazing, thank you." Right? It's the ego death that allows you to overcome this stuff. And they're also, these people are contributing their pen names and all of that, so they don't have like,
it's a little less personal.
Exactly,
right?
it's less personal.
Your voice on a record, it's a bit kind of
exactly
which I try to explain to Buffy. Was like, writing songs is, I don't want to say harder, but there's a lot more involved in it. Whereas when you write words to page, there's nothing else to it. It's words to page. You leave it to interpretation, and music's like that too. But the backing track can influence your interpretation of the song, right? And imagine an upbeat song with a downbeat beat behind it, right? Like think, ever seen those dudes that do like
that's a major key and you turn it into a minor key, it's a different song,
right? Yeah. You ever see those dudes who do reinterpretations of metal songs with pop songs, right? It sounds like a completely different song, right? So with music, it's a lot more sensitive, and you have to get over like worrying about what your audience thinks about. Whereas for some reason, it's easier for me not to worry so much with putting this out, and it's starting to get easier and easier as we put more and more out, where this community, I still don't, is there a name for the community?
Yeah, the Cerberesian.
No, I meant the whole
anybody who contributes to the book is a Cerberesian.
Not ours, but I meant the whole thing with
I don't think there's a general name for that.
No, there's not.
Greater community.
I don't think there is, and which makes it harder to like, highlight and say like, this is from whatever. This is Apple.
Well, the thing that the community that
everyone is into chaos magic and Hellenism. Those are the two things.
And they all have a genuine and authentic communion with the muse, right? So
Yeah.
that's why it's so easy, because the muse is what provides. Right.
Yeah,
It's not anything that's like, it's not forceful where, like, with rappers and their ego, they're not genuinely channeling the muse. Otherwise it would be easy. Right. That's why when Johnny says, oh, it's like, I don't understand why it's so easy for you to make rap music. It's like, it's not me doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm just a vessel.
That's very
I'm just
Tom
a
Waits
vessel
of
for
you.
the muse. Right. It's just flowing through me. It's not me thinking about all of this stuff in my head. It's me getting it out. Right. And I'm just, it's coming to me and I'm getting it out. So it's a genuine communion with the muse. And that's why, I don't have the same ego about my music that other people do, because it's not my music. It's the muse's music. And, I'm doing a Cerberesian thing. So I'm communing with the muse in threefold time, and, if I'm being egoistic about something, it's like, I have the ability to, rap in threefold time. Most people barely know how to rap in 4/4. Numbers aren't real, so anytime I use numbers, I'm being extremely ironic.
Yeah, that's also true in the book. So numerology is a fun thing we play with intentionally, and sometimes he'll throw something out and I have no idea what his intention is, and it'll come out on a podcast like this, or he's talking to someone and I will catch it and I go, I had no idea that's what you meant, like yeah, I'm learning more about my book as we do these type of things than what we've written 3 of them now. Okay,
to be fair with you, just listening back, I'm usually pretty good at catching Mandy's references, but just listening back to conversations, he'll catch me. Things will go over my head and I'll just be laughing. But it's something that I should know. He does this all the time.
That's just that's just who he is, though. And it's his ability to grab things and connect the dots is, I don't even understand it. And I listen to Aman on Wednesday nights doing the Greek stuff. I don't know half of it, and it's a lot of fun, but he keeps pulling it out of nowhere. He goes, oh yeah, that word means this, and then it's all related somehow. And
what I want to know though is, like, Mandy, how did you discover satire, and specifically how did you discover the whole Hellenistic philosophy? Because it's like a niche within a niche within a niche, like
I'm super interested in this answer too.
Well, okay, so
it's beautiful. We're in the same niche. It's just, how did you get here? I know how I got here.
Well, okay, so in the book, one of the things that I say, and I really stress, is the importance of pooping and the importance of poop, right? And a lot of people say, oh, you do their best thinking on the toilet, yada 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 yada. We moved to a new house. What, it was the year 2000.
Yep.
Yeah, the year
2001.
Okay, so it was 2001, right before 9/11, right? That was the summer between 7th and 8th grade for me. I don't know what it was for you.
And junior, freshman, sophomore.
Right, so you were just in high school. Okay, so this was me before high school. So the summer between 7th and 8th grade, we moved to a new place. I knew no one in town. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anybody. And the house that we had, for some reason, had this. It's called a Pittsburgh potty, or it's a type of toilet that's just in the basement. That when miners, people who worked in mines, not miners, people who worked in mines, would come home dirty, they would enter through the basement, change their clothes, and then you'd have like this little toilet over in the corner. But for some reason, the toilet, that they didn't have a walled off room or anything. It was just a toilet in the middle of a basement. It's called a Pittsburgh potty. And we moved into a house that was on a lake that had a Pittsburgh potty, because the husband and wife couple, they didn't like that originally built the house. They didn't like that, he would come off the lake from fishing all day and, be covered in all of his gear or whatever and smell like fish. So he would strip all of his clothes, use the bathroom, so he didn't have to go upstairs and do all that stuff, right? So they put a Pittsburgh potty in the basement. And I used this Pittsburgh potty as my throne. And I'm dead serious. I used it as my throne. That's where I did all of my reading. Everything that I read, I did it on this toilet. He can confirm.
I will confirm this Pittsburgh potty was adjacent to my studio.
Yes.
My studio was behind a false wall that I built this false wall was built, and then I built a studio, or I built a mic booth, which I was at work one day. I built the booth, and it's just a skeleton with the slabs. And I came home, and he threw a bunch of clothes in there, and a bunch of stuff, and he threw a Bible in there, and I believe it was our dad's Bible.
Yeah, it was our dad's Bible.
He threw our Bible in there.
It had annotated
He
notes.
he said, quote, "I read this fucking thing. It's going in your booth."
Yep. So I read the Bible. I read my dad's Bible cover to cover. It was the summer of 7th grade to going into 8th grade. And I didn't do any of the assigned reading that we were supposed to do. Like, you have to do summer reading or whatever, whatever. So I read the Bible cover to cover, sitting on this Pittsburgh potty in my parents' basement. And I read it. And I went, whatever this is, it's not me. I'm the opposite. Put it away. And I read a whole bunch of stuff. Like, we went to the library. I started, we had the internet. So I started like Googling, like, the opposite of Jesus. And what pops up? Antichrist. So obviously I start reading a lot of Nietzsche, and I had the luxury of starting with Ecce Homo. So I started Nietzsche and I read it backwards, right? So everything, I read the last book first and worked my way back to Birth of Tragedy.
So for people who don't know, Ecce Homo is a satire.
Yes.
And it's explicitly so. And it is also kind of summary of his entire philosophy and kind of reflective on his entire body of work. And now a lot of this has been lost to a lot of more modern people because they read just the more popular books. And there's a real way to interpret it in a very harsh manner, I want to say. Nietzsche can come off as but that's not what he's about at all. And when you really look at everything he's doing, he even sets up all of his books are supposed to follow the festival of Dionysus. So he has a satire, he has a dithram, he has a comedy, and it goes in this kind of. I can't remember. He has a tragedy. Sorry. Yeah. Right. So he has satire, comedy, tragedy, and a dithram, and it's this whole thing so that he can have the entire experience of the Dionysian festival. And when you read them, you go through the whole experience. So Ecce Homo, it's kind of funny you read it last because it's supposed to be, if you read it how he intends it, the rug being pulled out from under you.
Yeah.
Oh, it turns out that I'm kind of this big clown.
Yeah. I describe it as when Penn and Teller do the cup and balls trick with the clear cups, right? At the very end to show you, like, it's still an impressive piece of art. It's just the magic isn't real. It's a trick, right? So essentially what I did, my experience reading Nietzsche was I watched him do the cup and balls trick with clear cups first and went, oh, whatever this is, I'm that. Right? Like immediately after reading the Bible, like I probably the like within an hour, I went, whatever this is, I'm not it. Oh, Nietzsche. And I read Ecce Homo and went, oh, he's a clown. He's a satirist. He's joking. This is comedy, right? So I start reading all this secondary, reading what people have to say about it. And I go, none of these people know what they're talking about. They've never read this fucking guy. They've never read they don't understand him. So, when I was 13, I became obsessed with Nietzsche because I read the goddamn Bible and I read the actual Bible. And so our parents just sold their house recently, about a year ago.
A year ago now.
Did you keep Pops's Bible?
Nope.
Okay, so if you would have kept his Bible, you would have noticed that
Why would I keep that?
I know, you didn't think about it. So if you would have noticed that one of the handwritten underlined notes that he had was Mark 14, 51, 52. Our dad, at some point, reading the Bible on a goddamn submarine, came across Mark 14, 51, 52 and went, what? So it's underlined, triple underlined with the word what and circled. So, this whole, Amun thing about how Mark 51, 52, like other people have recognized this and went, what the hell did I just read? Right. So my first experience reading the Bible, I'm reading my dad's Bible and the only written note is what? Mark 14, 51, 52 with the circled triple underline. So,
that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
It's funny how different Christian groups interpret it, because in my personal experience, I grew up in Catholicism, and then I was into evangelical, and then I left. And
Julie's in the chat.
Who's in?
in Catholicism, at least the priests that I knew, what they told me was that was John the Beloved, right? And it wasn't a baby, or wasn't a young Niskos, right? It's they don't use that translation. They tell you that this is actually John the Beloved, the most close person to Jesus, which just made me think it was gay, to be honest. that was my perspective for a long time.
That's super fair.
Until the Ammon stuff came on. I thought it was I thought Jesus was getting it on, and his buddy got drunk and passed out.
Yeah, I mean that's the reason why I'm so drawn to this Ammon stuff, is because he mentions the thing that our dad triple underline squiggle in the Bible that I read when I was 13, right? And that was the really the only impression was like, the hell? Like, my dad said what? And that's it, right? And that stuck with me when I was 13, and I was 30 something when Ammon starts talking about it, and I go, oh, hey, that's the guy from all those Carl Ruck citations. Because before that, I was really into Carl Ruck. I worked on an agricultural research farm when I was in college and studied ergot. So part of my job was to go around the field and put little baggies over the ergot, and with the date and time, and contact the
so this is important. We should explain this to the audience for people who don't know. Ergot is a type of fungus that will grow on grains and can produce LSA, and can be combined with other things to produce different entheogenic chemicals. And Carl Ruck is a classicist PhD who wrote a lot on. He collaborated with several ethnobotanists, specifically George Wassoon and Richard Evans Schultes, and they really got into exploring what the mysteries were about from that kind of pharmacological perspective and the medical perspective. And they were the first people to really document this idea that the Kaikion and other various mystery rites were following these entheogenic rituals that you would see elsewhere. Like Richard Evans Schultes, everyone should read him. That guy's one of the coolest motherfuckers who ever lived. He went out into South America with a bunch of American money to find rubber. And what did he do is he traveled up and down the Amazon doing drugs with all of the tribes and documenting it and being a really awesome anthropologist. There's a really good book by his student Wade Davis, who recreates the trip like 20, 30 years later. That's also really worth reading. And it kind of does both stories, but going off on a tangent. Sorry. Point is that ergot is this ingredient that is in this magic rite that is fueling these mysteries, right? And you were studying the production of these grains. Actually, that's how we started talking and becoming friends, because Dion and I were doing a series called The Occult Explorers, and we were really looking at the production of grain. And one of the things that we had come across when we were reading the Carl Ruck literature is that Ruck and his colleagues tried to recreate the Kaikion, and it fails.
Yep.
Okay. And so we're like, why does it fail? Immediately we go, well, they don't have the theatrics, and that has to be a major part for sure. But even more important, what we were considering was this idea that the plants themselves were different.
Exactly.
And this is kind of essential thesis that Mandy had been arguing. So when we met, we were like, my speculation was his thesis. So do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I worked on this agricultural research farm, and one of the things we were studying were heirloom varieties and landrace varieties of. What do you do?
Did I just load? No. We're good. Sorry.
We're good? Okay.
No, sorry. I was trying to do the chat on my computer. I shouldn't do that. Sorry.
So anyway, I worked on this agricultural research farm. We were studying heirloom and landrace varieties of wheat and barley and rye and triticale and spelt and anything that's in that family. What they would do is pick these different types of farms that had particular like microclimates. They were at a particular elevation that had, you know, this amount of water, yada yada yada. So the farm that I worked on was picked for a particular reason and grew these particular types of grain for a reason. And one of the things that they were studying was the susceptibility of various grains to ergot. So they picked the farm that I was on because you know, that microclimate was susceptible to ergot. So what my responsibility was to walk around the farm every morning, and if I saw any purple fungus, to put a little baggie on it, a little net, to tie it and to write the date and the time and contact the agricultural research scientists or whatever. And I got so obsessed with it that I started reading Ruck. Right. It's just like, you know, there's this people speculate that the Salem witch trials were because of ergot. And then there's all this like, no, it's not because of that it didn't work out that way and blah, blah, blah. And it's pretty much been disproven. But also,
we should clarify that ergot, if it does get into your food supply, it can potentially, the two most common things are it can cause madness, you know, and lead to seizures, or it can cause necrosis of the flesh and lead to death. So it is extraordinarily dangerous. And there's reasons why people freak out over this. Like some of the earliest German literature is about maintaining purity. And they talk about how it's like battling Satan. And this is actually a fight against the pagans, because what you're saying, the pagans were breeding specific crops in order to promote ergot growth.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Ergot could affect other crops. So there's this whole war going on over this shit.
Yeah. It was a thing that, you know, people were, they were selecting against it, right? Because they were looking for abundance and, you know, to get as large of a yield as possible. When the original reason that, you know, these grains were selected and cultivated, and I'm talking about, you know, probably 200, 300,000 years ago when women figured this stuff out, right? There's actually
kind of, or early
way back. Like, you know, it's possible that Neanderthals were doing this practice even before, you know, so because ergot, there's the oldest recorded is about 2 million years old, and it's in amber, and it's, you know, teeny tiny compared to what we have now. Right. So it's because of the size of the actual grain that it was growing on. Right. So as the grain gets bigger, the ergot gets bigger, and you just get a larger yield of that ergot. So what these women were doing was they weren't selecting the grain for the purpose of like making bread. They were selecting the grain for the susceptibility of the fungus. And they brought that back to their dwellings and got it closer, and were breeding and selecting for this fungus. And as the fungus, you know, got bigger and bigger, the grain got bigger and bigger. You know, the yield of the medicine was larger and all that. What this medicine was used for was to reduce bleeding during childbirth. So this is traditional medicine that, you know, the leading cause of death amongst women was childbirth.
Absolutely.
And it's, you know,
it's bleeding. It's internal bleeding.
It's bleeding, is the leading cause. Exactly. You know, and you know,
hasn't changed, by the way.
Yeah, and you know, some like these women were so brilliant that they figured out how to you know, harvest aspirin from the anal glands of beavers that were chewing on willow bark. Right? Like, how the hell did they figure this stuff out? You know, well, they were able to figure that out, and that's far more complex. You know, turning an animal into, you know, a naturally harvesting medicine from an animal is far more difficult than naturally harvesting medicine from, you know, wildly occurring grasses. Grass is abundant; it's everywhere, right? So you can go out and select that. You know, you have more control over it. So that's how agriculture came about, right? That's why we don't have beaver culture now, right? We don't have beaver culture because that's really, really difficult to do, is to give the right conditions for a beaver to eat willow bark so that you can harvest the anal glands from it to get you know, aspirin, you know, for childbirth as well, because this is gynecological medicine, right? And that's coming directly from Amon too. Amon like talks about that all the time. So, you know, all I'm doing is saying, like, you know, Amon and Carl Ruck recognize this. You know, it's much easier to select for ergot than it is to select for beaver butt, right? And they were able to figure beaver butt out.
Just how radical, like, some animals and some plants will radically change through cyclical evolution, and that can be directly influenced by human selection. Exactly. And we've seen this time and time and time again. Look at dogs. Dogs are a prime example. They just naturally evolve into new forms. and they take on radically different forms. One thing we talked about our previous chat was like in North America, there used to be a type of wool dog that they bred for the production of wool. Like it's now gone extinct, but they were like, it's such a wild thing to think about. So imagine all the different types of dogs that they would have had back in ancient Greece. And we know certain types, like they had the dogs that hung out at the crossroads and would clean up the bodies. They had the dogs that would be at the temple of Asclepius and lick the wounds, you know? So there's all this different stuff. And Hercules is always with the dog. It's his dog that finds the purple mollusks, right?
There's that purple again.
That purple.
Oh, yeah. And
we also know the dogs are usually people, too, in these texts, right? Yeah. It gets all weird. They're usually...
Well, it gets weird, but anyone who owns a dog will tell you that the dog thinks they're a person, right? I mean, they really do. And this is something I've grown through as an adult, because I grew up in fear of dogs until probably he started the farm and had dogs, and I would come around. I had a major absolute fear of dogs. Could not be around them. Don't care unless it was a little pocket, purse dog thing. If it was bigger than my thigh, I could not be around a dog like that. Once he started the farm and started having dogs, I was, basically immersion exposure, being around them. I had to get comfortable with them. The more I'm around dogs, the more I'm like, man, these things are so cool. Like they really do think they're people. It's so fun, and I know that's a weird tangent, but that's just an honest personal account that like I was absolutely afraid of dogs till when did you start the farm? 2014. So
2013.
13. So we're literally talking 11 years ago. Up until then, I would have been 33 years old, afraid of dogs. You know what I mean? Like absolutely afraid of dogs.
Wow.
Terrified of them. Like can't be around them. Like what's that dog over there? Can't do it. Even when my daughter was born, a dog got loose and came into our backyard, and I'm holding her in my arm, and we're just like hanging out outside. A dog came in my backyard, and I lost it. I went into full freak out mode, ran in the house, put her down. Like what? If that happened right now, I'd be like, hey, what's up, dude?
Wow. One thing I wanted to ask you about, I mean, just that's wild about the dogs. It's amazing that you've gotten so into it, but it makes me think of, okay, like Mandy specifically is involved in a lot of satire, political satire. And this is a very this is a battleground, a very intense battleground. And your beloved Nietzsche is someone who is a victim of this intense battleground from both extremes. And if you read Nietzsche, he's definitely neither. He's a radical individual and very much into that Helen type philosophy. But the point being is that satire is often misunderstood. Satire often gets co-opted by disingenuous people who want to exploit it. And this is, sometimes your jokes and your obscurity, your esotericism, to use Lucan, it becomes, it's the worst thing imaginable.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about this? How do you combat this? What do you do with satire in this crazy political landscape? And especially as people want clarity, and a satirist can't be clear.
So,
that other guy with the bald head that has tattoos on his head.
Yeah.
Was
Love
it
that guy.
Amon?
Yeah.
Amon? Yeah.
That guy.
From Lady Babylon. One of the things that he says is that Nazis fear the Great Mother. All right. If you have fear of the Great Mother when you go to hell, Cerberus is going to bite you in the past, the present, and the future. He's going to eat your ass and your head at the same time and your body, and it's going to hurt in the past, the present, and the future forever. Right? This is damnation forever. The concept of forever, while Cerberus is eating your ass, not in a good way.
Can you explain who the Great Mother is for those who don't know? In the chat.
Oh, in the chat, people are asking what the Great Mother. It's me. I'm not the person to give a straight answer about the Great Mother because I'm incapable of doing that.
That's fine.
So
You
the
got it.
great mother
a
is
non-straight
Dodge.
answer.
we'll
He
say
did that.
this is
It
the
wasn't-
womb of creation. Okay, the womb of creation.
Ah,
If the nun,
the
right?
nun. Okay.
okay,
But
that
also the
infinite
sea
black, the night,
but also the sea foam.
The sea foam.
Yes.
That's why all
that
the
which
guitars
gives
sea
birth,
foam
as Plato would say, like I was talking about. I'm not the huge. I do love a lot of what Julian talks about, but Julian is way too platonic for me in general. But what he would say is that the Great Mother is the birth of forms. She is where she's potentiality, right? But more than that, I view the Great Mother as the great axis. She's that which she is the unfolding of creation, and she ensures the unfolding of creation, continuous creation, ever unfolding, ever flowing, ever expanding, you know? And this is an essential thing. Like even Nietzsche gets into this with his eternal recurrence. It's ever continuous, you know?
So anyway,
So much.
Nazis fear the Great Mother.
Yes.
And if you have a fear of the Great Mother,
Yeah.
when you go to Hades, Cerberus is going to eat your ass. He's going to eat you ass first.
Yep. Which is different
In the
than the dude
past-
on the rocks that gets eaten by the vultures.
Very good pull, Johnny.
Yeah.
That was a
which-
good
I
one.
don't know. I don't know the name.
Prometheus.
Prometheus. I don't have a
That was
card.
a good one,
I
Johnny.
don't have a fucking thing.
It's the opposite of Prometheus.
Okay.
Cerberus will forever eat your ass.
Yes.
In the past, the present, and the future.
That sounds
Prometheus gets relief. Prometheus gets to die and then have a new body to then get
terrible.
eaten.
Every day.
But if you are a Nazi who fears the Great Mother, Cerberus eats you ass first. In the past, the present, and future forever. Forever in the
He's
past.
so
Well, it's
Forever
also
in the
something that-
future. And forever in the present, Johnny. That is
One of the coolest things about Julian is that he does tell you this kind of central prophecy, and it's really, really cool. I really love this, and it kind of, when you look at how the world plays out, it makes sense. And we know that Nietzsche was inspired by this cyclical substance and the idea of the eternal recurrence. It comes from Neoplatonism, and it was deeply influenced by prophecy, the Chaldean oracles, and Julian. And this part of Julian, I absolutely love. He talks about how not any Greeks got the Great Mother. The Athenians, they brought the Great Mother to Athens. And when they did this and they installed her, that Athena, they created democracy, right? And they created the Delian League, and they developed philosophy. They created a freaking golden age, right? But then a problem sets in. They see the worshipers of this Great Mother, these people who are performing the rites of Gallus, the Galli, and they see the women, the Maenads, who are engaging in these magical drug rites, and they flip out and they say that these are foreign, these are not kosher, and they persecute them, right? And this persecution it dooms the Athenian Empire. The wrath of the Great Mother says, bam, okay, the Delian League is done. Athens will never shine as bright as she did. But they go to the oracles of Delphi and they want to know, how do we get rid of the Great Mother's anger? What do we do? And they say, build the Metrum, the temple to the Muses, the museum where you keep all of your history, all of your philosophy, all of your records, all of your knowledge. And even though Athens never arose again as an empire, as a power, like we once saw, its philosophy, its ideals never died. They were reborn and they transcended their space, and they became incredibly influential across the world. And we're still going back to it now. And here's where it gets cool too, is that Julian then talks about how the Romans, right, they're inspired by this Hellenism. And when they're in their darkest moment fighting against Carthage, this is before they're the Grand Empire. They're still a republic.
What year is this?
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, I'm trying. I like timelines.
according to the Gregorian calendar.
Yeah, which isn't real.
I'm so bad with dates. I'll look it up.
No, it's fine. Go on.
Ace
I'll look it up.
A B or CD.
Up, up, down, down, left, right, left, right.
BA
In the olden days. But here's the point: it's that Rome was battling for her life against Carthage, and this was a defining moment, right? It could make or break her, right? She could have been usurped by another empire. Okay. What happens is the Romans go to the oracle at Delphi, and they ask what to do, and the oracle says, "Do what the Athenians did: get the statue of the Great Mother from Pergamum, bring it to Rome, install it on the Vatican Hill." Right? And they do that. They bring it and they install it on the Vatican Hill, right? And they bring in all this grand tradition, and the empire is born. Julian's whole entire mission in life, he's an apostate. He converts to paganism. He's a devotee of Helios, right? He believes this to his core. He was deeply offended by the cynics who were mocking the gods, even though they're his fellow pagans, you know? This is like an extreme pious man, and he saw that the Christians were going to fuck up the empire, that they were doing what the Athenians had done before them. They were attacking the people who worship the Great Mother. They were attacking the women. They were attacking the pagans. They were going against all of this freedom, all of these rights, you know? And he was trying to prevent that, and he was trying to explain what was going to happen. And we all know what flipping happened. Rome did fall. And it fell for this reason, you know?
The reason that's not a prediction, right? That's not like you look into the future and go, this is what's going to happen.
Right.
Right. That's learning from the past.
Correct.
To inform what it is you do in the future. Right. That's thinking in trifold time, right? You're recognizing yourself now. You're knowing yourself now, right? You know thyself in thy time. What did it mean? Like, what type of person would you have been in the past? Right.
Right.
What possible can you be in the future? Here's the thing, Johnny, you're a male.
Yes.
You're not capable of putting a new generation, right? You're just contributing. You're not doing any of the risk. You're not doing any of the risk.
No risk. Yeah.
And that major risk was the possibility of death.
Right. No, I completely understand this.
Right.
Yeah,
so
no,
you understand the importance of going out to a field
absolutely.
And finding the medicine, collecting beaver butt.
Yeah.
Right. Collecting beaver butt. Imagine how, right. This is like, that's the thing, is that it sounds like it's fucking crazy to us. It sounds like it's crazy to us, but that is because of a position of luxury, not a position of privilege.
No.
Privilege is, so we're talking about luxury where we don't have to go out and collect beaver butt.
Right.
Well, anymore. It's not even something that we think.
You have to think about, we got to also think about where, okay, we have a lot of the stuff that is written has survived from the masculine lens. It's because male writings were preserved, and the Christians did not preserve female writings. Okay, so even when the women did write stuff down, it was not preserved. It was destroyed. So we have well-documented evidence of the galley side of this, right? The men who go through the rites to transition to become women. And we can understand what's going on here. And there's a lot of people miss it, okay? The Galli are imitating the Great Mother, okay? They're stopping their generation. But more than that, by invoking the madness and cutting off their genitalia, this is their pregnancy. This is their birthing moment. This is that pain and madness that all women experience in that creation. This is how they end their masculine energy and go back to the mother through this act of madness that's sparked by the drugs, by the beast, right? That causes that castration. But that castration is akin to the madness of pregnancy. It's the same thing. It's of the same color. It's because these people are becoming the goddess. They're imitating that energy. And you have to go through the madness of pregnancy and birth. You have to be reborn, a woman, right? This is also imitating all of these cyclical events. Kronos castrates Uranos. Uranos goes to the ground and becomes Aphrodite. Okay?
Tree.
Right? And then what happens is Zeus castrates Kronos, and he goes to the ground. Like it's a cycle of masculine and feminine energies and transformations, and it's all continuous forevermore, you know.
Right.
So
But we have it from that perspective, that masculine perspective. The more feminine perspective has been lost, but it's still a feminine cult. These men are imitating the mother, you know.
Let me diatribe for 2 seconds.
Okay.
Do you think this is? I'm trying to put it into words. Do you think this is explaining a transformation or actual acts that happen? Because I could tell you person I was before watching my wife make children, and I mean actually pushing them out, versus who I am after. I am a different person. I could tell you. Do you think they're describing a what do you call that word? Like a rite of passage, or something that actually happened? I mean, it could be both, right? Sorry.
Well, okay, so this definitely did actually happen. We have plenty of evidence of people cutting off their testicles, going through the rites of the galley and throwing their testicles and on these temples or at the doorways of people. Like and it was happening all over the Mediterranean and in many different forms. There were the canophori, there were the they're the galley, there are many different types of these priestesses, these groups, right? Because the idea is that even in some of them, they're not doing the castration right, they're doing drug rites. They are removing themselves from marriage, they're imitating the women, and they're engaging in henbane. Like we see this even on the Indian side. Like one of the most important gurus of all time is this guy Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he is kind of like the godfather of the Bhakti tradition. You know Hare Krishnas?
Yes.
They start with him. And his whole thing was that he was supposed to be the goddess and God in one person, Radha and Krishna in one physical form. And he would take on moods where he would be the goddess or be Krishna. But he says that to be a mystic, to be engaged in the rite of exiting, one has to become a woman. Okay, and what they mean by this is like in the mental sense, and through these transformations, they're also going on these strict hormone things, because there's something about feminine hormones that produces more divination. Okay,
yes, right.
This can be argued, but this seems to be the case because we see it so incredibly represented. But there's all of these men, and there's all of these traditions of these men having to feminize themselves in these mystic rites. And you see this continued in like the Catholic Church and in the Christian tradition to this day. You know, the cult of the mother goddess, the Skobie, that was in Rome just became the cult of the Catholic Church. You know, they just kind of adapted everything. They put a new layer of paint on it, you know. But like Julian tells us, for example, even as he describes the castration of Attis or Gallus and this imitation of the mother, he talks about how he does this internally in the self. Okay, and he describes about how it's more about a rejection of the material, you know. So like even though he's the emperor, he doesn't give a care for anything. He sleeps on the floor, he eats with his men. Part of the reason why he becomes freaking emperor is because they make him Caesar of Gaul, and he goes to Gaul. He has no idea about how to do anything. Okay, he's not a general. He spent his whole life being an academic. But he listens to his men, and he befriends his men, and he takes their advice, and they win. And then his men love him so much that when the emperor Constantius tries to take half of his men to go fight in another war, his men flip out and elect Julian emperor. And then Constantius dies, and it so happens in the will, it says that he's emperor. But so it's like he's elected because not because of his war prowess, but because he was a good person. He could talk to his men. He respected his men. He got the respect of his men. And this is that idea there, is that you can go through this transformation. It does require this rejection of creation and celibacy, it seems, at least from Julian's perspective. But again, I would argue like this is only one potential way. This is a very, what you would call like light work. I feel like Julian makes essential mistake. He condemns the nymphs. He condemns matter, and he says that you have to castrate and reject matter. But the nymph and the mother goddess are the same. This is the grand trick. It's like you think you're abandoning the mother goddess by chasing after the nymph. You're just chasing after the mother in a different kind. It's like the bottom is the same. Like it's that hermetic axiom. As above, so below, but even more so, it's that which is above is the same as that which is below. Everything is a series of bodies in these ancient myths. Sorry for the diatribe, guys.
No,
That was a beautiful diatribe. I love that.
I just learned a lot.
That was amazing. Hell yeah.
But it sets up a lot of this stuff too, and it connects to your guys' work because this idea of the cycles that Julian is talking about with the cycles of Attis and generation and rejecting matter and everything, and this plays into also the Saturnian cycles, which are a huge, massive import to Nietzsche and to Mandy, because that's the Apollonian and the Dionysian that you were referencing. When he called you Apollonian, he's talking about this. In the cycles, there's this understanding that Nietzsche does 2, but the ancient Greeks do 3. I prefer the ancient Greek method because I think it's a little more clear. But what it is that everything, all of life, all of matter, even ideas, memes, everything goes through these cycles. And the cycle is always the same. You begin in a Dionysian frenzy of freedom and inspiration. Then you start to pursue order and perfection. And you start to become defined and you start to achieve high art. But then what happens is it calcifies.
Right.
And that image starts to create an orthodoxy. It starts to attack its children, that which is descended off it. And by attacking its children, it makes itself irrelevant. And it goes into sort of a no longer relevant. It becomes displaced and replaced by its kids. Like you're a hip hop fan.
Yes.
I love to use this example because we all watched in our own lifetime the Saturnian cycle play out. We saw the birth of rock in the 50s, Dionysian frenzy. Then up through the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you get that Apollonian height. By the 90s, it starts to become ridiculous, starts to attack everything. It attacks its children, hip hop. By the 2000s, it's dead. It's no longer relevant. It's ceased to be of the major cultural import. And we watched hip hop go through that Dionysian to Apollonian, and now it's in a similar mode.
Yes,
like,
it
to
is.
Me,
yes, it is.
That whole battle with like Kendrick Lamar and Drake, this is the establishment of orthodoxy and the attacking of your children. This is it's as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry to say this to you hip hop heads, but now hip hop is no longer going to be the dominant musical force.
Well,
it has proven itself.
It just destroyed itself.
No, well,
whatever will.
You established an orthodoxy and attacked your children. You're irrelevant.
Nas said that in 2003. He said hip hop was dead in 2003. He was about 20 years too early, I think. But I would agree with you, and I think it was very funny that you say this. I started reading a new book today called "The Fourth Turning is Here." Have you read The Fourth Turning before?
No. What's
The Fourth Turning is about, you said Saturnian. Is that the word you used?
Yes.
So they explain that societies work in cycles, right? And what you just said, very similar to what they said, different terms. Basically, we start with, the artists, and then I cannot, I'm still working through it, but basically everything works in a cycle. And that we are kind of basically stuck in the cycle of the 30s right now, where things are it's chaos and nobody knows what the future is. And there are a couple of branches that it could be. Sorry, I'm trying to, it can be like 3 branches of what could happen based on choices of people who are in control and people who choose to take control, things like that. Anyways, it's just like what you said, and they refer to the ancient Greek in it. And I think centurion is a word that they use. I'm crazy. I should have done more. I was not expecting to have to talk about this. I'm like, what? chapter.
This is
3.
how the muse works.
I'm like
Look at that.
I'm like two
God, you're a
chapters into.
vessel.
I'm like 2 chapters into this book.
Oh, it's because you've had beer. You've become Skobakis one.
I've only had
You're
like
channeling
2
the muse
beers,
now,
thank
Johnny.
you.
You're
It's not
Skobakis one.
I need like 6 more before we really get there.
Skobakis one.
He says this all the time, by the way. That's a really funny.
There's another really great Greek myth that I want to convey to you guys that I know Mandy knows this, but this will help you really understand kind of the general perspective of a lot of people who are really invested in Hellenic philosophy. And it's the original story of Zoe in the Golden Apple. And in the original story, right, you know this was the Eris version, but in this version of the story, the basic idea is that Zoe, the goddess of life, she gives mankind the gift of the logos, of reason, to discern between good and evil, to make, to know, to be able to perceive love. And the way to interpret this, I think, that's most important is to understand this as a loss of instinct, okay, and a gaining of free will. But the essential message of that story is supposed to be about taking responsibility. The mother has let us out. We are now adult children. We have 1 foot out the garden. It's our job to figure out how we live on our own. She's no longer holding our hand. We no longer have instinct to guide us, right? We've been given absolute freedom. Now we need to learn responsibility and how to take responsibility. You're laughing. What's in the book?
He's quoting himself here. He says, kids poop their pants on purpose sometimes. Adults poop their pants by accident sometimes. Old people poop their pants on purpose and by accident sometimes at the same time. He's doing the triad thing again. Whereas I think it's loosely related to what you're saying, and he's being a cynic in a way of tying it all together.
Oh, you mean me pooping on the entire subject?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's all triads too.
I'm pooping on a triad, but the poop is important, Johnny, because the poop goes in the ground.
Yes.
And the food comes out of the poop ground.
Right.
Right. So, and mothers wipe babies' poop butts.
And fathers who are responsible.
Yeah. That's a new phenomenon.
Yeah, no, it's very new.
It's a very new phenomenon.
Yeah.
At least within the historical record, people who were recording, right, these things.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really have the perspective of a poor father. Did poor fathers clean babies' butts?
I bet they did.
Maybe not. It's not. They were still like a very patriarchal society. We don't have that information, right? So you have to really be able to put yourselves in somebody's shoes and then imagine those shoes stepping in poop to really articulate what it is that you're trying to imagine, right? So a lot of my problem with philosophy and the history of the historical record is that it doesn't take into consideration all of the dead bodies that are around, the Noah's flood, right? Mm-hmm. What about all of the bloated bodies that were surrounded by that ship, right? We're talking about so many people that drowned. Mm-hmm. Those bodies float. Mm-hmm. And they get bloated. Mm-hmm. Right. And we're going to see sharks attacking them and crocodile. Where is all of that?
It's not written down.
That's why it's not a true story.
Right.
Right. It's not a real story.
But Mandy, this brings up a deep philosophical question. One of the ones that comes from my colonial degree. So colonialism degree. Can the subaltern speak?
In trifold time, yes.
Because this is a big question, right? Like, can those who are truly oppressed even have a voice?
No, because
They speak in trifold time, right? And what they're being what's being quieted is the present, mm-hmm. right? So you have to speak louder in the past and in the future, right? So you're not necessarily fighting for yourself; you're fighting for the future. And how is that articulated? Right? You can be articulated your future, as an oppressed person, or you can be articulated in the future as a person who projects oppression on themselves,
Hmm.
right? You can
Okay.
imagine yourself as being oppressed while you're an oppressor, right? That's very, very simple
Yeah,
and very
that's-
easy to do,
yep.
especially when you're a person who has our color skin,
Yep.
right? You can put that down into, less than 15 words. Can I put it that way?
Yep.
And that is, the thing about being able to put it into very few words is that you run into the very ironic the very ironic prank that Arcturus played on us and has demonstrated is that the ancient Hebrew language only has 8,000 words.
Mhm.
And if you're Danny, you're going to go on a public podcast and pretend that it has 89,000 words. Where the hell did you get that from, bud? But it only has 8,000 words, right? And the ancient Greek language, being, in touch with the Great Mother, right? It has 250,000, 500,000, it's
Mhm.
just an insane amount of words, right? An
Mhm.
insane amount of words. So essentially what Arcturus was communicating to us is that the ancient Hebrew language, with its simplification in a very small amount of words, and this is very ironic if you catch the less than 15 analogy here, that 8,000 words has caused so much chaos over the past, right?
Mhm.
It's just the foreskin
Mm.
of the massive, throbbing, linguistic penis that is the ancient Greek language, right? The more in touch you are with the Great Mother, the more massive and throbbing your linguistic penis can be, right? And
Well, it
as
has to
above,
be.
so below.
It has to be. The Great
Yes.
Mother is a whore. She wants the biggest dick. Why do you
She
think
wants
everyone's
the
building
biggest
towers? What is Babylon about? She wants a big dick. What are the pyramids about? You need to
Starting
make
a
it
mosh
come
pit.
so that the crops come back.
Mhm.
It's that simple.
Somebody clip that. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard in my life. That was fucking amazing. Johnny, what you just witnessed
I did, yeah.
was a fucking pseudo sage and a chaos witch articulating the Great Mother.
Mhm.
That was fucking perfect. I mean,
Did
that answer your question? What the Great Mother is?
no, I think I'm getting it.
How long was that diatribe? But it's important to the book.
Not long enough. We can.
It's all in the
I
book.
can do this all day.
This is what the book is about, Johnny. Here's the thing:
The Great Mother is Gaia, right?
the more
She is that Earth. Nature.
Yes, and she wants the biggest throbbing linguistic penis,
Mhm.
right?
Well,
The
High art.
ancient Hebrew language is only the foreskin of that.
Mm.
The more and more throbbing that linguistic penis is,
Mhm.
the further it goes down into the earth, right? As above, so below, right? The satirist, the history of the satirist
Mhm.
is the throbbing penis when you dance around the pole. All right. When you dance around the
The
pole, you're
maypole,
stomping.
right? That's what you're
Yeah.
doing?
You're stomping. The way that you dance
Mhm.
was symbolic. The vibrations fucked the earth, Johnny.
Yeah.
Who's down there? You know who's down there?
Who?
Cerberus.
Cerberus, yes.
Yes. You need to understand all of this and to be in touch with all of this to have any hope of Cerberus not eating your ass in the past, present, and future. You understand that?
Mhm.
That's what our book is about. So we're celebrating this on Friday, Johnny.
So here we got volume 3.
It took an hour and a half to get to the book.
Oh, God. But it was worth it. A great chat, So amazing cover. We got the 3 heads of Cerberus, also past, present, and future, right? As you were saying. I like how the present is holding both the past and the future too.
Amazing.
Very interesting.
Oh yeah.
But so I don't want to spoil everything in the book. I hope everyone, you can get it right now on Amazon, and tomorrow Johnny will have a link up on his website for you guys to purchase volume 3. So I wanted to show you guys just everything that you can get in here, because there's some incredible stuff. So you have a bunch of Mandy's bandmates like Sketch and Grandpa Leather. You have Billy Witch Doctor, another one of your musical friends. Nancy, who's big on our Discords. Nick, who's a good friend of ours. He wrote a poem called A Veil Removed.
Love that.
Jevim, another good friend of ours, who provided a carrot cake recipe, which is super cute. Sentinel Vega, that's you, Johnny, right?
Yes.
Sentinel Vega is Johnny's counterpart on Mars in the future.
Correct.
So Arcturus is me on Mars in the future. Sentinel Vega is what Johnny channels.
As a sidebar, we have a heavy metal side project where I asked him one night, I need something to channel. I need somebody to channel. And he goes, how about a robot from Mars? And I said, done. And then I just built the whole character around it, and now it's a podcast and a story and a whole thing I'm doing.
Hell yeah, Morrow Mibs.
Yeah, the Morrow Mibs. So
it's a super secret project.
So Sentinel Vega is me. When you see Sentinel Vega, that's me speaking.
Yeah, you can find that. You can find Morrow Mibs on Spotify. It's like a super secret for those with ears to hear kind of a situation. So for the people watching right now, go check that out.
Yeah, I'm plotting all the stories and everything. I just haven't put it all out yet, but it's a that's how we're tying everything together. Sentinel Vega is me, so yes,
it's part of the skeleton.
Cool. I'm excited to dig into that once you
that one. Roots of Resonance was a lot of fun.
Dogwood trees, right?
Dogwood trees,
nice.
Yes,
Hell
yeah.
Dogwood trees? I didn't get to this one yet. So what's the story there?
So we were just kind of like musing on what would somebody. So Sentinel Vega he's a humanoid sentinel. He's a humanoid cyborg robot who basically he works in the catacombs of Mars, which is now basically a ruin.
On a dystopian Mars, so
dystopian civilization on Mars. He's working in the catacombs to protect the treasures in the catacombs. So he finds these random treasures. He finds these people who live there. He finds things, and he just and while he's patrolling, he comes up with these songs. And the songs that we put out are called Narrow Mibs. And he finds a radio station, and the radio station is how he transmits the songs.
So the songs are important because Arcturus is who guides Sentinel Vega, right? So Sentinel Vega has to come down and commune with Arcturus and say like, hey, I need you to tell me where to go so I don't get lost in the Martian wasteland and all of that stuff.
Right.
Because he has to return back to the catacombs before it gets too cold and all of that. So Arcturus is programmed with all of the ancient Greeks, specifically Orpheus.
Right.
So the way that it works in the future is that it has a certain amount of steps, and there's a certain dance that Arcturus has to do, or Sentinel Vega has to do to get to the catacombs, right? Because Orpheus is, a musician and all of that. And it's, it's very percussive because we're talking about many, many millions of years in the future that we've been able to do this with this hyperstition ritual. And part of the importance is that you have to balance Apollonian Dionysian because it makes a helix, the DNA swirl there, the spiral, yep, right, through time. And you have to have both sides, right? So a lot of the reason that, the failed attempts to do this is because they're not truly balancing their Dionysian and Apollonian tendencies to make that and complete that spiral. Because they're only one person trying to do this while they're in a drunken haze or whatever. Or, tripped out on meth, listening to jungle beats and stuff. And then quacking like a frog for some reason, which I actually thought was kind of cool. Sometimes Nick Land was cool when he was quacking like a frog and he's like, well, some of us are still Marxist. That was a really cool moment. But other than that, I think the guy's pretty fucking weird. We make fun of him a lot in the book, and we're basically saying that Nick Land failed at doing hyperstition because he didn't balance his Apollonian and Dionysian, so he was only doing hypostition, and that makes a lot of the jokes in the book extra funny if you have any idea what that means. But that's for those with ears.
Nick Land is invested in this magic of hysteria, right? Mm-hmm. Which is projecting images into the past to transform the future.
Yep.
Basically. And it's high ridiculous chaos magic.
Doesn't work.
And so of course someone like Mandy would love this, but Nick Land is also kind of an accelerationist fascist piece of shit.
He is.
So
the definition of fascism is palingenetic ultra nationalism. Do you have any idea what the word palingenetic means, Johnny?
No.
Okay, so the word palingenetic basically means that you are attempting to return to a golden age, you're returning to a mythical past, right?
Yeah.
So
This is going back to
what fascism is when you want to return to a mythical past while worshiping squiggly lines on a map. That's what that word means. And if you take that and you expand that concept in any series of ways, you're doing fascism. And that's a thing that you need to be aware of. And it's very dangerous. The worship of squiggly lines on a map, right? It's a acceleration of squiggly lines on a piece of paper, which is money. Squiggly lines on a map is an abstraction of that, right? That's why you have faces on money that represent the territory of the squiggly lines in the map. Gaia doesn't actually care about your squiggly lines on the map, Johnny,
I believe you.
because you're drawing lines on her. What are you doing? Connecting freckles? Gaia doesn't fucking care.
All he says is one thing: adapt or die. That's it.
Adapt or die.
That's it. Just be in that adaptation. You have to be ever adapting. And these are people who are anti-time. They're trying to stop time. They're trying to create some kind of golden age. You know, it's always the same thing. These people want to stop time and bring peace on earth, kumbaya, love for everyone. It sounds beautiful, but it is not real. And you can't stop time. You can't not flow. You can't not adapt and change. And if you don't get into this reality, you're just going to get destroyed. And so much of fascism for me in Christianity is the same, because it's this ideology of rejection of reality, rejection of reason, and doubling down on stupid, doubling down on something foolish. One of the things that really hit it for me when I was reading about Hitler, and you hear that Hitler was talking about before he died to several people about how he couldn't imagine a world without a German state, and that to commit suicide would be a triumph of the will over reality, because he wouldn't exist in a world without a Germany. Like, to me, that is as insane and as stupid as it possibly can get.
Well, and something that's come to my attention that I never understood until now. I'm telling you very honest, in the last couple of weeks, is that the Nazis were obsessed with it's been a long day. Atlantis. They're obsessed with Atlantis, and they think they're
which
from
is
Atlantis.
Satire.
Well, so do you honestly think Atlantis is satire?
No. It is
not just a little bit.
No. Or their obsession with it is satire, that somebody fucked with them.
No. The story that they all source from,
yes,
was a satirical story.
I believe so. Utopia. I believe that. I not that I believe it.
There are magical civilizations and there are magic islands that the Greeks talk about, but Atlantis is it's a creation of Plato. It's bullshit, and he tells you in the opening passage of the dialogue.
And what is his opening passage? Does he say far away in a place?
Was it Francis Bacon that wrote the New Atlantis, the one that popularized and
influenced? I don't know enough about all that stuff.
I think it was Francis Bacon, but I could be wrong.
But I had no idea that this idea was tied to Nazis.
Pork. So I have pork on the brain, but also I'm associating pork and Francis Bacon right now with the Atlantis story. So somebody in the chat might actually confirm that I'm not crazy here. But Francis Bacon, the Utopia thing, the New Atlantis, was a work of satire. Graham Ignatius Donnelly and all of those people, they ended up taking it seriously. There's also the equivalent in the Pacific Ocean with
Lemuria.
Lemuria really
plays on.
Okay. Lemuria I know a lot more about because I had to study this when I was studying. So my degree is I specialized in like Eastern religious movements, but I was looking at new religious movements a lot of the time and how these things were coming out as the result of this intersection of globalization and colonialism. Okay, so Lemuria is a really interesting one because it's just so silly and ridiculous. Before we understood plate tectonics and the shifting and the idea of Pangea, people were trying to explain why the hell are there lemurs in India and Madagascar? Why are there lemurs in India and Madagascar? So someone said, well, there had to have been at some point some kind of land bridge. There had to be an island chain that connected these that then got washed away. Now the British, they love to popularize this. It's called displacement. Okay, so part of their colonial thing is you say that the people who are indigenous aren't indigenous. They're from somewhere else. And you create all these myths and you promote it. And they've done this since the dawn of time. Mormonism is born out of this bullshit.
Yep.
They were literally making up lies so that they could displace the indigenous people in North America, said they were Jews. You guys are actually not indigenous here. And they did the same thing in India. They went to these South Indians and they said, look, we're looking at your mythology. It says that they're these magic islands. Probably in the mythology, they're talking about Sri Lanka. But this doesn't fit with their Orthodox narrative and these religious exploiter narratives that the Indians want and the British want, right? So what did the British do? They tell them that you're not actually from the South India. You're from these islands that sunk. And then some religious extremists jump on this idea because it allows them to assert their texts as authoritative. And now we have all this new age nonsense and nationalism about flipping Lemuria. And it was just made up. It was a scientific theory that was made up to explain something we didn't understand that then got thoroughly dismissed. But because it was a part of colonialism in this British practice, like they did this everywhere. They go to a place, say, you're not from here, you're from there. And that means we can take your land, you know?
Was it documented that they said they were doing this?
Yeah, we have a bunch of books like this. There's a really famous guy named Macaulay, and he writes a book on education. He writes another couple of books, but they talk about all of the different methods about how they remove people and how they cause problems. You know, the British would also do things like do fake archaeology and cause tension myths. Like they'll go to an area, and well, there was this one thing when I was in India. It's called there was this big mosque, and it's built in this area that the Hindus said was the Ram Jamabhoomi, was the place where the god Ram was born. Ram is an incarnation of Krishna, Vishnu, one of the most important deities in all of India. So to have a mosque on the birth site, this is a huge affront. This is like insane. Except it's not flipping true. When they did the archaeology and they did everything, there was no Indian temple here. And it turns out this was largely manufactured by the British secretly in order to stoke the flames of cultural violence. Because they even talk about this. How do 150,000 British soldiers control millions upon millions of Indians? You gotta divide and conquer. You have to keep them fighting amongst each other. They used the trains and they used community violence. Community violence. You know, they even set up like different codes of law for Muslims and for Indians. And like it got so complicated, and it's always a way to create more wedge issues, right? They do it everywhere. Look at what's going on in the Middle East.
Right.
You know, this is classic British insanity and American insanity playing out. You know, colonialism, we should say. I shouldn't say, you just call it colonialism, right?
And it's literally nothing more than lines on a map. And, you know, colonialism in the, you know, capitalist, you know, situation, which is what makes it unique, is what breeds fascism. Because prior to that, you're talking about, you know, various slave societies or feudal societies, and those have different, you know, social tensions that you can play on each other and such. And, you know, that's why you end up with, colonialism the way that we have it. And, you know, now that we're dealing with, you know, as an explicitly capitalist, you know, hegemony, you know, that tendency, that mother goddess hatred, the worship of lines on a map, right? And the using lines on a map to take the, you know, mother goddess's children and force them against each other because of a line on a map. It's no different than a piece of squiggly, you know, a piece of paper with squiggly lines on it. The goddess, the mother goddess doesn't care about your piece of paper with squiggly lines on it. She can set those on fire. She can rain on them. It can get dropped on the ground and turned into whatever, all of
Also,
those things it's all disposable. But when you take human bodies and you force them against each other because of a squiggly line on a map, you're literally taking the mother goddess and you're connecting freckles on her back and causing genocide. It's the craziest goddamn thing in the world. And I have zero sympathy for it. I have zero sympathy for it when the Greeks did it to, all of the tribes around them. I don't have any sympathy for it. It's just the fact that the Greeks were capable of satisfying the Great Mother through their massive, throbbing, linguistic, phallic, phallus. They were able to achieve that, right? And it's because they were also in tune. So if they didn't worship the lines on the map as such.
She doesn't like her.
But we've talked about this too, Mandy. The big problem was, what was you quoted it in, I think it was either in your book or in one of the speeches where we talk about it was the love of food. They wanted good taste in food. They wanted spices. And this is colonialism, right?
Yep.
We need to have a pineapple to put on our freaking plate to show off to our friends, even just to let it rot, just to say we have a flipping pineapple. And we don't even think about all of the death that had to come for that pineapple to get your bloody door.
So Snappy, to bring it back a little bit, one of Mandy's theories that he has yet to publish, which I really wish he would, is that the gathering of grain and converting it to beer is what built society. And
that's well kind of established.
Yeah. Right. I'm not saying it's his idea, but it's one that he's introduced me to over, many nights of this stuff, that I've become like, holy shit, like that really could be a honest to God,
honest to goddess,
goddess, she, they, them, like I don't care, like whatever, honest, that could really be true. Like it could be.
So as far as I understand from looking at the sources and from in anthropology and whatnot, there are 3 sites where civilizations come up:
right,
China, Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and Peru. And all 3 of these sites occur with the creation of alcohol.
And
China, alcohol. It's a grain alcohol in Mesopotamia, and I believe it's a corn alcohol in Peru.
And so what do all 3 of those sites have in common, as a person who falls asleep looking at maps? There are step mountains that separate all 3 of those, not step mountains, but they're big mountain colonies that you can't get over, that separate and isolate each one of these places. And they all come up with their own kind of religious beliefs, right? In 3 different areas, 3 different kind of ideas, all kind of tie together. But this is just kind of thing I'm dancing with, but like they're isolated.
So
they're kind of stuck for a long time.
Well, so one of the things that happens is that it's a misconception that agriculture caused civilization, because
religion caused civilization.
Exactly. Religion is what caused civilization. Agriculture is a byproduct of medicinal culture.
Agreed.
Okay. And medicinal culture is throughout history gynecological.
You got it. There's a big thing we're missing here. Okay, so you're right, because the worship of the mother goddesses always happens on the mountain. So it makes sense that these religious sites where they're producing these drugs are going to happen in these isolated mountainous regions. Where things get wild is when you have the development of the cities, and the cities all come with the building of phalluses. Yes. What is the pyramid? The pyramid is I'm moving the mountain to where my water source is, where the fertile grain is. So now we can do the mountain rites, worship the stars and the mother from the more advantageous area. That's literally and it happens in Egypt and Babylon, where they build these giant phalluses, these centers of worship. And society comes out of that, because you're now creating a pilgrimage site that everyone comes to. And because it is also connected to water and and potentially agriculture, you can sustain a population. So eventually you create a religious cult that grows up. And then this religious cult is now influencing and has direct influence over everyone who comes there, and you create a whole trade network. Like it's always the marriage of nation and religion, right? And this is where you see the birth of both. You're seeing the birth of commerce and religion happen at the same time when they moved the mountain to the watering hole. You know, you build the phallus where you live. It's huge, transformed everything. You know.
So I have two things that I want to say before the muse delivers something else, and I reject it. One of them is the pyramid has an artificial cave. It is not a genuine mother goddess cave. Those are very, very different things, right? You know, in that experience of going down there, you have an artificial experience versus a genuine experience where you could potentially die in that cave, and that's very important. And I don't want to forget that. But I also want to say that to do a little bit of necromancy on the show here, I want to invoke Mark Fisher, and I want to say that it is easier to imagine the end of capitalism than it is to imagine an authentic matriarchal society.
I agree. It's true. It's easier to imagine that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean,
Mark Fisher, and there's also
have authentic matriarchal societies, though.
No, but
well, we don't have. Wait, what? Sorry, I missed that. What did you? I'm sorry.
There are authentic matriarchal societies, though, that have been documented across history. And I know our society is so patriarchal we can't imagine these forms. Is that what he means?
Well, so documented versus imagined are two different things. Who's doing the documenting?
Right.
Exactly.
Good point.
So it is documented through the patriarchal perspective, right? We don't have an authentic, you know, imagination of this. We have, you know, the people who are chosen.
Well, I would argue something like the Haudenosaunee, especially pre-colonial Haudenosaunee, were absolutely matriarchal, and that is well documented within their political literature and the archaeology and the anthropology.
But it is only now, because we are in this late stage capitalism, you know, post-colonial late stage capitalism thing, that we are beginning to understand what that documentation means, right? And that documentation is still a product of capital, right?
Yeah.
It's not a genuine, you know, communion with the mother goddess that these people, you know, existed in their everyday life. So whatever representation we have right now that is available to us, and my brother and I can sort of, you know, speak directly to this, because the two largest, you know, casinos are within, you know, walking distance to us. Mohegan Sun and Foxwell. They're right there, right? So, you know,
it's a mystical perspective too. I keep thinking about my friend Gast. He writes about this, and this idea that in those matriarchal golden age societies of the pre-Bronze Age and Iron Age, Stone Age, like, you know, Stone Age kind of times, we cannot return to that because we fundamentally have transformed the natural world, and we have ruined that connection. So it's not a connection that can be reestablished in the same way. We cannot connect to the mother as the ancients had done. We have to heal nature first. We have to take responsibility and re-engage in a new way into the future, right? This idea of constantly going back to what was lost, it's almost a futile pursuit. We have to be inspired by the past to create something new. It has to be different. If we keep doing the same things we did before, the cycle is always going to repeat the same way, you know?
You just perfectly articulated our book.
Let's
looking at the table of context.
Let's getting into it here.
I love the diatribe. The spirit of the diatribe is so much fun, Johnny. We're just using the book as a medium to inspire
diatribe.
I think that's the point of it.
It's just an object that exists.
I'm pretty sure he's just like, oh, this is going to be my favorite coffee table thing to fuck with somebody.
I put it in the bathroom.
Yeah. Well, my mother-in-law keeps it in her bathroom.
And that is where you are supposed to keep this book, is the bathroom. It is a
all the time.
bathroom reading series, Johnny.
Yeah.
But this kind of Voynich manuscript thing. So this is really, we were kind of briefly talking about this.
Yes.
This is you guys. So you wrote this, Johnny.
But yeah,
Um,
this is me literally. By the way, this is the most guilty I've ever felt contributing to this book because I wanted I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to do stories anymore, right? I wanted to like let's contribute original stuff to this book, then maybe I'll turn into something later. And Mandy turned me on to the Voynich manuscript. And so I did what any person who actually went to college and learned how to research would do, and I listened to scholars who who work on this thing talk about it for hours and hours and hours. I mean, I must have listened to 6, 10, 8 hours of these people from Yale talking about this book. And I went into it blind, completely blind. I didn't know what it was. Mandy just mentioned like, hey, you know, you should look into this thing. It's over there somewhere. I bought a copy from Yale. And anyway, so what I wanted to do was just lay out the actual dead ass facts, no like interpretations of what this book is. I didn't want to include who could have owned it, who might have owned it. I just wanted to say like, this is what we know about this book, and that's it. And it literally fits on one page because there's they can't tell what language it's written in. They can't tell if it's a language or it's a constructed language or a constructed language. All the handwriting is very similar. There's no errors,
All
right?
of the characters are women.
What's that?
All of the characters are women.
All the paintings are all women, and they're all like these interpretations of them in baths, and it's so hard to tell what they're doing. I mean,
and you know that a lot of the plants aren't real too. That's the other thing.
Are they? Well,
they haven't been able to identify a lot of them.
So
because they used to exist on Mars.
Well,
Arcturus sent it to us. They used to exist on Mars, right? These are things that were brought from Earth to Mars by humans who were ambitious.
So
and
the other
didn't understand. You know, they were like, oh, we can go to and do an odyssey to Mars and go and colonize Mars, and they didn't learn that, you know, the Martian mother goddess also doesn't care about their lines on a map, right? And you're not prepared for it. You're not a Martian. You're not, you know, you didn't come out of billions of years of evolution that the mother goddess provided for you to be able to have the hubris to think that you can go to Mars and do the same thing. You're just looking at the past and failing. If you thought in the future, you would have been able to see. And our person would have sent it to you and said, hey, don't do that. So what we're trying to do.
What do you want to say here, Johnny?
I have a lot of interpretations, but Gandhi said that its interpretation was a gynecological test. And I could see that it could be that. There are so many things. I mean, there's pictures of them like, it's all women, and they all have you know, they're not skinny, so that it's like they're either pregnant or just postpartum. They're all dancing in a circle, it looks like. You know, it's so strange. The
to me, it seems clearly a mythological and religious text on some level,
right? And
and it seems to be recipes as well.
To go back to what you were saying about the plants, is like the plants are so hard to tell if they're real or not real. Is this somebody's drug trip, which was my original. As soon as I'm looking at this looks like somebody is just lost and just drawing things. But the more I look into it, the more I look at the writing, the handwriting, the more I listen to Amun and Wednesdays, I go, I don't know. Maybe this is just really sloppy Greek or a shorthand Greek. Who knows?
Some people think it could be shorthand or could be from an Asiatic language, which could explain why it's so hard to translate, because it's using like a Latin.
Well, and part of what that is if, you know, the manuscript contains 240 pages. There's a bunch of pages missing, by the way, written on vellum, which is animal skin. And what the people from Yale are saying is that somebody who wrote it on vellum would have been poor and would have been, you know, they would have taken their honest time to write this on vellum as opposed to parchment or whatever was available at the time. The fact that it's written on vellum is very like a key telling that like this was not some like person from the church or somebody rich that wrote this. This was somebody who's from the lower class that wrote this.
It's a Dionysian gift to some sort of a cult that existed at that time that was masquerading as a nunnery
to make vellum.
This was a gift to them because they were honoring the mother goddess, so they wrote this down in their like they're like, hey, you guys are y'all are doing this Bacchic thing over here.
Well, what's very interesting,
you're basically doing this monad thing where you're dancing around with the thirsts, and you're just put it on this vellum here. Thank you for it was a satyr that gave a gift to the monads afterwards. Thank you for the good time. Here's this vellum to write the experience down on and capture it in your authentic, a monad perspective, not my satiric perspective, because so much of human history is written from a satirist perspective, not the monad's perspective.
Which is why
the manuscript is written from.
Okay.
But this is why I wanted to include only facts about it because
the golden fleece, god damn it.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say is anything beyond what I put on this, and I'm not saying it's this is the honest truth, but like this is everything that I could tell from honestly 12 hours of research on it, reading the book from Yale, reading and listening to their podcasts and their basically TED Talks. This is all that could be actually said about it.
Uncle Ted Talks.
And Uncle Ted Talks. And everything else is an interpretation, right? So even the people from Yale, they're like, we think there's anywhere from 3 to 5 scribes that wrote this. So that means 3 to 5 people who put pen to paper and wrote the words, which it's incredible because some of them is like, you could look at it and like, oh, this handwriting's a lot better than on the 10 pages before it. But is it the vellum that they're writing on? What could it could have been the pen? Like, there's a lot of you could really go off, But that's what I wanted. I really wanted to just be like, this is all we know about this mysterious book from the 1500s, which is incredible. And I just like it fits on one page. I just wanted to be very articulate that like this is crazy that everything else that's 240 pages fits on one page and that's it.
Wild. Yeah, no, it's crazy to think that we know so little about something, and it's such an interesting magical piece, right?
That's why I like it so much is that we know so little about it. It's like this is insane to me.
Well, we also know so little about the Towel of Minerva, and the Towel of Minerva is the golden fleece, right? So essentially, the vellum is actually you just took the golden fleece and you shaved it off, right? And then you sold just the skin, and that was what was written on it. So the Voynich manuscript was written on the golden fleece.
But I thought this was funny. You guys included Grandma Ellen's carrot cake recipe from Jevem.
I'm gonna make this one day. So.
Oh, you haven't tried it? I wanted to ask.
No.
Chef
But
Mandy, have you made the cake? Is it good?
Oh, one of my favorite things in the world is carrot cake because carrots are so phallic and they fuck the ground. And then really, really wonderful.
That's why Julian won't eat them, by the way, because they're too deep in the ground.
You know what I love is that there's so little ingredients in this whole cakes recipe than like if you were to buy a hamburger bun from the corner store. Like it's the amount of ingredients is.
So if you want a pro tip on how to grow carrots really well is that you have to keep them in the ground after they freeze and then harvest them and use them for carrot cake after they freeze in the ground. The sugars concentrate, right? So think about how the mother goddess provides for a carrot, right? The carrot is the phallus that grows into the ground, right?
Right.
It has to stay in the ground for an entire season.
Yeah.
Right. But it also grows these greens, right?
Yeah.
The greens that are outside of the ground is what's growing the phallus underneath, right? And the greens are collecting the sun, okay, and concentrating sugars. And when the temperature gets really, really cold, the greens that are growing out of the ground sacrifice themselves.
Mhm.
And what they do is they give a huge burst of sugar to the carrot under the ground. And what that carrot wants to do is stay under the ground so that it can then sprout again next year and produce seed.
Right.
So it takes 2
What-
cycles for a carrot, 2 fuckings of the ground for a carrot to produce seed that's viable.
But this
And then
is
you
true
take
for
that
almost all root vegetables, right?
Not all root vegetables, because a radish, it fucks the ground very, very little.
Yeah.
Radish fucks the ground very, very little,
yeah.
and you can get seed. A daikon fucks the ground very large, which is kind of cool, but that's because of the luxury of the type of ground, right? So if you have
Right.
a rocky ground,
Yeah.
you'll get a curve,
Right.
and Mother Goddess doesn't really love curves all that
No,
much,
she
you know what I
doesn't.
mean? Like, you don't really love that kind of curvy thing, right? And then it kind of has all of these little thistles that grow off of it, and it's not really so. But what I'm really trying to get at is that if you really want to have the payoff and get the best carrot cake you can possibly get, what you want to do is to after the greens have sacrificed and concentrated the sugars into the phallus,
Right.
you then take that sugary phallus and make carrot cake out of that.
This is like ice wine. And you get the grapes.
Beautiful.
Beautiful, Johnny. Ice wine.
Here, guys.
That's amazing.
They just meet the freezing point, and you harvest them right at the.
Uh-huh.
It's called ice wine. It's supposed to be some of the best stuff
Hell
you've
yeah.
ever had.
Hell yeah. That's Johnny communing with the Hyperboreans right there.
Oh no, I've had some ice wine. It's
you're
fantastic.
communing with the Hyperboreans. That's what that means. Hyperboreans were people who drank ice wine that concentrated and had higher amounts of sugar. And then
Sounds like my type of people.
I mean, okay. We Hyperboreans drink ice wine is really what Nietzsche was getting at. Because of the concentration of the.
I would like to hang out with them.
Yeah, because of the concentration. But you can also get that on elevation too. So you don't have to be
Well, that was they're always grown.
Get up north.
Guys,
we're usually grown on the rock.
But we're talking about what the mother goddess provides, right? So you're concentrating the sugars that are in the grape, and you can get higher concentrations of alcohol out of it.
Because
and alcohol
got more
is
sugar in it.
What is that Bacchic? What Bacchus provides, right? So sorry.
Let's move on here.
We're talking about fucking the ground with really sugary carrots. So we can get into Cerberus here. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. What's going on here with this? You have this ongoing thing throughout this volume on the Discord, the Manifesto of Cerberus School of Cynicism. What is your manifesto? What is this all about, the Discord?
Well, so we're basically within the book. We have inserted a manifesto. And because the book is essentially four books in the year, and then we have an additional 5th that is the skeleton key to unlock all of the mysteries and all of that. What we did is inserted in the center of the 4 books a manifesto of what it means to be a Cerberesian cynic. Right. And what we really try to do, one of the main things about Cerberesian cynicism is that all triads, no matter what they are, anytime you have 3 of something, it is the Mother Goddess providing you a metaphor for Cerberus. Okay, she provided that for you. And if you don't know, Hecate is Cerberus according to Carl Ruck. So there, that's the skeleton key there for you, which is the answer to how many penises Cerberus has. So if you have ears to hear, you know exactly what it's talking about. Exactly. Cerberus does not have any penises. So what you can really do is really see if anybody's in tune with the Mother Goddess and ask them, well, how many penises does Cerberus have? Because their tendency, because of their capitalistic mindset, their patriarchal mindset, all of these things that were inherited over 10,000 years have forced them to not turn their brain off and say, Cerberus is a female, according to the Greek.
Yeah.
Right? According to the Greek, Cerberus is a female. The pronoun is the product of the patriarchy that has kept the records. But according to the language, Cerberus is a female dog. The pronoun has been artificially inserted. So we're uncovering an ancient retconning of patriarchy into Cerberus, which is because Hecate is Cerberus, as above, so below.
But also, explain to me this confusion, discord, bureaucracy triad. What's going on here?
Okay. So we're taking the audience through the 5 stages of chaos, which is we're crossing some rivers here. The first river that you're going to cross when you are interacting with anything linguistic, right? Anything new. If you've ever been to a somewhere that you've never been to before, that you don't speak that language, and you try to buy something at the market, it takes a little bit of this and that and this and that and this and that, right? So what we were doing is taking the audience through all of those stages of chaos. The first stage that you interact with is simple chaos, right? Which is just purely the grunts and groans and the squiggly lines don't match. It's completely foreign to you. You don't understand what it means. As you kind of get a hold of the squiggly lines and all of that, you enter into chaos, which is where you can, have that stage where it's like, or confusion. Sorry, you enter into the confusion stage where you cross another river, where you go, this squiggly line and this grunt back there meant this squiggly line and this grunt, but it can also mean this and that. So you have some options there where you take a road, you take a fork in the road, and that fork in the road is the beginning of a triad within 5 stages. Okay, and the next stage, the next river that you're crossing, which is a metaphorical river, it's not a real river because you're within a triad that starts to loop back until you become an expert at this, right? The confusion. You enter into discord, right? Which is where you interact with other people and you practice your grunts and groans on other people.
Right.
And you say, does your grunt and groan match my grunt and groan?
Nope.
Then we enter back into confusion and it becomes a dyad, right? Until, does your grunt and groan mean my grunt and groan? And we come into agreement. And that completes the confusion triad, right? That is the approximation of communication, is your grunt and groan and meets my grunt and groan, and we're describing something in reality. So just between you and I, we agree that this grunt and groan means that thing. So we have entered bureaucracy. And that confusion, discord, and bureaucracy triad really bounces off back and forth, 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 while you're interacting with an interlocutor, right? And when you pass that, you enter into, so we're describing the discord stage here, where and this is, we're within the manifesto, we're taking the audience through every single one of these stages. So the way that I'm describing the discord stage here, I describe some of the pranks that Arcturus has done and inserting confusion and really forcing us to go back into the confusion when we thought we were into the bureaucracy stage and we thought our grunts and groans meant the same thing. Nope, not back in the bureaucracy. We're right back in the confusion. And Nietzsche has a wonderful way of summing all of this up. Johnny.
Yeah, so this was the quote that you had here in your part 2. So I'll just read this. It says, "What therefore is truth? A mobile army of metaphors, metonymies, anthropomorphisms, in short, a sum of human relations which became poetically and rhetorically intensified, metamorphosized, adorned, and after long usage seem to a notion fixed, canonic, and binding. Truths are illusions, of which one has forgotten that they are illusions, worn out metaphors which have become powerless to affect the senses, coins which have their obverse effaced, and now are no longer of account as coins, but merely as metal." Everything is all fake and it's all made up.
Mm-hmm.
What was that from? Whose line is it anyway? It's all made up and the points don't matter.
Right.
Exactly. Nietzsche said that, and it took him a lot of words to say it because he was being a poet and he was being ironically satirical about it. And I think Nietzsche puts it more poetically and more truthful, ironically, than the summation, when you take that and you collapse it into a few words, right? I think Nietzsche is doing a better job of being a satirist than the improv artists that wrote that particular line for that Hollywood commercial bullshit, right? Nietzsche wasn't about being commercial. right? So, Nietzsche's communion with the muse is far, it's there, it delivers.
So you then go into so you're taking us through all of this Discord. What's going on in part 3 here?
Oh, so just the tip. All right. So this is where we essentially what we've done with the book is, or with the Discord stage, is describe pranks that Arcturus did not do, right? Confirmed pranks that Arcturus did not do, and explain so that we can use the contrast, the difference there to explain some of the pranks that Arcturus did do, right? Because if Arcturus, if you confuse Mandy Moorehol with Arcturus, what you're going to end up with over time is Arcturus invented rickrolling. Arcturus did not invent rickrolling. Mandy Moorehol invented rickrolling. Okay.
I have to pee.
So that is the main explanation of the Discord stage here of chaos.
All right, craziness. Yeah. I do remember you getting into this where you're talking about, oh, he did these pranks but didn't do these pranks. It's just
exactly. So what we're doing is differentiating between Mandy Moorehol and Arcturus here.
I see. So why did you include? Okay, so for people who don't know, Anacreon is one of the most famous Greek poets. He was really famous for writing kind of body poetry that celebrated drinking and celebrated love, specifically pederasty. We know that in the States there was an Anacreontic society. I think that's what this song is from. What's going on here?
Okay, so if I was any good at playing guitar, what I would do is play that melody for you. Anybody in the chat know what that the melody here that is? You've played music. Can you sing it? Can you sing that melody?
Is that the freaking national anthem?
That's the national anthem. So what we have entered into here is the international relations stage of chaos. And to close the entire manifesto to the Cerberesian School of Cynicism, we have chosen to show everybody who followed their noses through all 5 stages what the actual source material for the national anthem of the United States was, which was a hymn to Bacchus. And we provided
Bacchus written by a drunken pederast.
Yes. So that is what all of the, squiggly lines on a map and all of the nuclear bombs that have been dropped and all of the bullets and all of the lost limbs and all of that were for. And, the song the tune that these people were honored to, that you can't take a knee at a stupid bread and circus game, and unless you have the proper color skin, all of that is set to the tune of a hymn to Bacchus.
But it's one of these things that's so wild about America, right? The founding fathers, a lot of them were not the Christians that everyone thought they were. And this just shows you, right? To Anacreon in heaven, where he sat in full glee, a few sons of harmony sent a petition that he, their inspirer and patron, would be. When this answer arrived from the jolly old Grecian, voice, fiddle, and flute no longer be mute. I'll lend you my name and inspire you to boot. And besides, I'll instruct you, like me, to entwine the myrtle of Venus with Bacchus's vine. The adoration of Bacchus and Venus, that's the entire mother goddess cult.
The tune that the national anthem of the United States is set to. And here's the thing. I do want to point this out because I think Johnny was draining his lizard when this happened. What I asked Snappy to do was to take a look at the notes and to read them. And that goes,
oh, you can read sheet music?
Yeah, not very well, but this is a pretty easy and recognizable song. This is the national anthem.
So recognize that immediately because of the squiggly lines on the map.
Yes,
now here's the main message that we're making, right?
Right. Yes.
Is that the music that the mother goddess provides transcends whatever squiggly lines on a piece of paper that you are doing. This is what was written on the golden fleece. This, Johnny, it was squiggly lines in this form.
Which I mean, if
And Orpheus
do you want to? No,
Orpheus is a mirror image of Medea in Jason and the Argonauts. They are two sides of the same butt. Okay, this is one of the main message of Jason and the Argonauts is that Orpheus and Medea are two sides of the same butt in the story, right? So
Venn
the
diagram.
yes, and what intersects is reality, right? So that intersection there is the reality. What is being communicated is the difference here. So how they are different, they are actually different as mirrors, right? Orpheus and Medea is because of Orpheus's music and Medea's medicine that Jason is able to do all of the actually fucked up things that the song.
Cool.
But here's the thing:
gross.
if you know about Medea is able to actually mask things and really put a veil over anybody's eyes and put them into a trance. It's because of Hecate and Circe's magic. And exactly. So what she's able to do is to basically fool anybody. So all of these things that are, tragic and, from the male perspective didn't actually happen. Medea did not kill her children.
Right.
She fooled Jason to punish him for his transgressions against the mother goddess. That's the message of Jason and the Argonauts. If you actually understand the mother goddess message that's the Orphic Vox provides. So if you want to understand the Orphic Vox, right, you understand that.
Well, think about it like this: if Medea is the muse, right, and he invokes the muse and he asks the muse, I want the golden fleece. I want to be king and I want to have a family. So the muse, Medea, goes out to do these things, but these are tall fucking orders. These are moving mountain type orders. So they require a lot of insanity. She has to chop up her brother and spread the bodies out in the water so that her family doesn't chase after them.
She had to Christ a dragon. She had to
put Christ a dragon
in a dragon's eyes to be able to make this. Do you know how she was able to calm the dragon?
Music.
Orpheus. So she would not have been able to Christ the dragon if it was not for Orpheus.
Well, she teaches Orpheus the song. She teaches it to Orpheus. Orpheus is her student.
Do you know the song?
The one that's written on the fleece. Follow along.
Got it. Sorry.
It's a very, 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 very special song. But everything that Medea does is to aid Jason and is out of love for Jason because Medea is cursed by Aphrodite. And because Jason did the magic to make Medea love him, but the problem is that you ask the muse to do things for you and then you don't like the results. You don't like that she killed her brother. You don't like that then she is going to she's going to have the daughters of the king boil the king alive, So how everything plays out is not how he intended. So he spurns her and he tries to abandon her. He tries to get a new muse, a new wife. And that's when everything goes really bad for Jason. And the story is supposed to be, forget about the idea of killing the kids and whatnot, because a lot of this later becomes like he's pointing out about vilifying Medea. But really the idea is Medea must now destroy Jason. Jason has spurned her, so he has to have what is considered the worst fate in Greek world, which is to be utterly forgotten. That means your children are wiped out, your name is no longer said, and you die alone. And that's the fate of Jason, fundamentally.
Jeez. Motherfucker got what he deserved.
He did get what he deserved, right? Well, you don't. You don't spurn those people who do everything for you, who try to make who manifest your dreams for you. Like, it's insane, But back to the book. What's going on in chapter 13? Cloaked in Contradictions, the Towel of Minerva's paradoxical embrace and the unveiling of truth. You have all of these like axioms.
Yeah,
some were really fun.
Okay, so this is the dessert course on the book. So each book is set up as a triad, appetizers, which are frog legs. Our chorus of frogs here have sacrifice their legs to the appetizer course of each book. And then you have my middle section, which is the main course. What you've stepped into here is the dessert. So it's the icing on the cake. It's the sweet, sweet, sweet sugar. You need a cake to offer to Cerberus, and you need to know that recipe of the cake. It's a Hecate cake, a particular type of cake that's made with a particular type of meat. For some reason, you also have to have beans in your pocket. I haven't quite figured out the beans.
You know what's with the beans?
I don't know. I haven't figured that out.
We're on the vine. Dionysus is the dying and rising vine.
So anyway, what you've stepped in here is the dessert course. This is the Hecate cake. And the great thing about Hecate cake is that they're not actually sweet. They're made with dog meat. So they sometimes each bite that you chew on, sometimes they may be really, really good. The next bite may be incredibly bitter and you want to spit it out. But it is still a dessert course, and it is the that violent juxtaposition between pleasure and disgust. So it really depends on this is where the the bibliomancy of the book, where you can flip through and read a particular passage. This is what that intention is for. And essentially what it is a if you have ears to hear, it's an artist's sleight of hands, where you can a card magician's sleight of hand. So I'm sort of giving anybody who is fluent in tarot the key here, the skeleton key to how to do bibliomancy with the book, is that you palm the first 2/3 of the book and you only do the bibliomancy with the last third, right? So you have ways where you can pretend to flex the deck and then actually get to where you're trying to do the bibliomancy. And this is part of what I was getting at with the fact that we are so close to the two largest casinos that are in the country, Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods. They're right up the street from us, but we're also really, really close to the Voynich manuscript. And one of them is a capitalist venture with a colonial mindset attached to it, where you can do things with card tricks and that sort of thing. The other one is very, very authentic and reflects the unfortunate situation of the women that were silenced at that time. Basically, what I'm saying is that the casinos are very, very, very masculine. If anybody is tempted to come out here and visit the largest casinos, you got to recognize that they're very much a masculine representation of the culture that, and its time in capitalist culture. But Johnny and I grew up across the street from a native area. Was Gunjawamp. Remember the Gunjawamp circles, the rock circles, right? And we used to ride our skateboards over there and, hang out in these rock circles that are still preserved, and, they let the wildlife sort of, rewild and reclaim the land and all that. So you have to actually know, how to get to the trail and to see these things. So essentially the joke is that if you're doing bibliomancy and you're trying to do this card magic sort of thing with the book, and that is a tendency that you have, palm the first 2/3 of the book and do the bibliomancy with the aphorisms. The magic is really, really in the aphorisms. The rest of it is, mother goddess worship.
So I want to ask you about some of these aphorisms, though. Like, what do you intend? What do you mean by this idea of the spectacle?
Okay,
continuously comes up.
So the spectacle is the aphorisms are a parody of Society of the Spectacle, which was written by Guy Debord, who is a French situationist artist. The situationists were inherently satirists. One of the things that they used to do with their publications was they would publish a series of books that were like collages, but the outside of the book was sandpaper. And, it was designed to destroy the book that they were placed in on the shelf, right? So they were doing performance art in a very satirical way. And Guy Debord is famous for, writing the Society of the Spectacle. Yep. And one of the most famous lines from it is, the spectacle is not a series of images, but a social relationship amongst people mediated by images. So essentially what I'm trying to do is to outdo Guy Debord. with our aphorisms. So the Society of the Spectacle is just written as a series of aphorisms. And I think what we've done, what he did is describe, what the spectacle is in his time and yada, yada, yada. He stole the idea of walking around and philosophizing.
By the
From
way,
the Greeks. Cute. So essentially what I did is I'm satirizing while also paying homage to him. It's a very, very fun book. It's very fun to read. If you understand the quote, the society is a spectacle, is not a series of images, but a social relationship amongst people mediated by images. It's very, very fun.
It's also
Like I love this aphorism here. The spectacle, like a relentless sun, scorches our mind with its blinding rays, but the towel of Minerva provides shade, offering respite from the oppressive glare of manufactured realities.
There you go. The sweet relief, the payoff. Where I'm not being satirical in a funny way here. I'm being satirical in a non-funny way, right? I'm doing anti-spectacle, right? But I'm also paying homage to Nietzsche, like we talked about earlier, where the end is where you show I'm doing the cup and balls trick, where I'm explaining what all you just read if you followed your nose through that whole book. I'm doing the cup and balls trick with the clear cups here at the end. So I'm really revealing what the Towel of Minerva is metaphorically, metaphysically, whatever it is that he is. And you're going to notice a thing here where they start to have numbers and they start to be numbered. That is deliberate. It's not a mistake.
Are these 10 commandments? What's going on here?
Well, so we're mocking the 10 commandments. Very, very good.
There are 8 commandments here.
Yeah. So it's there's a whole series of them, but what precedes that is very, 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 very important. And you would not have known this because you don't have any of the reference. But chapter 16 in volume 3 is the gospel according to Archie. Stay chugging. My insides are outside. So Archie is a friend of ours that it's one of the most poetic ways that I've ever witnessed such a beautiful person dying. He had a heart attack while doing his favorite thing in the world, which was swimming. He had a heart attack because his heart was too big. He was such a beautiful person that his heart was too big. So what I decided to do was to dedicate an entire, everything up until this point was one single writing session where I wrote all of these aphorisms. And I took the last one and dedicated it to my childhood friend who taught me how to play drums, taught me a lot about life. He was a practicing Quaker, which is very, very fun form of Christianity that is very respectable. He was one of those people that
good dude.
So he was a very, very, very good dude. One of the best people that have ever existed on this planet. And he is not getting his ass eaten by Cerberus in the past, present, and future.
No, he's not.
He's hanging out there, scritching Cerberus's head. So what you stepped in there, I don't want to just overlook that. It's a very important. I have Archie tattooed on my body here. It was the very first tattoo very first meaningful tattoo I ever got. And then they start to get numbered, and what that does is indicate a different writing session. What I was able to do, if you just look at it, I was able to get almost 3 books out of one single writing session, and I wrote all of these aphorisms on the toilet. And my brother sort of took some of them, reconfigured them, sort of did some cut up method stuff to some of them, where there's some of them are nonsensical, some of them are.
Well, these
really
are all
profound,
sent to me in like a text message of like, it comes out this
big,
and I have to click on it like, what did you just? Okay, I don't know what to do now.
So anyway, what you stepped in here with the numbers, that's why I'm being ironic when I say numbers. They aren't real, but the realness is that we're looking at a different writing session here. So from that point on to the homage to Archie, they then become numbered aphorisms. So that's why there is a difference. It's deliberate, and I'm being sort of fun with the amount of numbers in each aphorism.
Very cool. So then you get into this. I think chapter 18 is the last chapter here, unraveling the tapestry, exploring the enigma of Minerva's towel. So what is this enigma? And I really like this stuff where you were talking about Plato
Yeah,
You know how much I hate Plato.
exactly. So, is there one of them in particular that jumps out at you? Do you want to read them out loud and
I'll read
see
them.
what the the reading out loud delivers?
So it
Because
says, as
everybody
Plato,
knows that it's a different experience to read something in your mind than to read it out loud.
Yes,
and
it
the
is.
book is so we were watching your show prior, before this happened, and you were doing bibliomancy where you're flipping through a book. Part of our writing ritual is that we do bibliomancy with Finnegan's Wake.
Yes.
So flip through Finnegan's Wake. Do you have that, or is it that?
It's,
So anyway, we flip through
it's
Finnegan's
over there.
Wake, and then whatever page jumps out, Johnny reads out loud, and it's sort of an exercise on how to put your brain in the headspace of a writer that's being abstract. And one of the really, really fun things about it is Joseph Campbell, who did The Hero's Journey,
Correct.
right? He wrote
Yep.
the very first book that guy wrote was a skeleton key to Finnegan's Wake. So read that, and then you'll sort of understand why I'm doing some of the things in the book that I'm doing here,
Cool.
and some of the influences. And that's why we have a skeleton key that's going to be provided in the final book, the final year.
volume, yeah.
Final, volume 1, because this is the book 1. This is just volume 3 of
Book one, right?
and book 1 is
Right.
4 parts plus the skeleton key, because we
Crazy.
follow the Aristotelian, the Discordian calendar, which is 5 seasons of 73 days,
Right.
right? Instead of what we currently have,
Yes.
because Eris is the one true goddess. Everybody else.
Well, which goes back to, if you broke the year up into 28 days instead of 31 to 30, you would have 13 months.
Numbers aren't real. So
All right, so let's read this here though. So it says, as Plato pondered forms, so too does Minerva's towel challenge our grasp of the ideal. It dries, yet is it dry? The philosopher declares it wet, yet the sophist, ever dry, never truly feels the moisture.
yeah, so it's a little Zen. Is the sound of one hand clapping?
It's like good fleece.
Is the towel dries, but is the towel dry? It's yeah. What about the form? What about the towel? We think about our bodies, and we're so you can't really. You're not truly undergoing ego death until you can relate to the object that provided you relief, right? Like, what did it take for that towel to come into existence so that it can dry your body, right? And then what does it mean to dry the towel, right? It's sort of the right, like I have to clean the filter out of my dishwasher, so at some point I become a dishwasher washer.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. And, we have these paradoxes in language, like what state is a vegetable that comes out of your garden and then you put it in your refrigerator? Your refrigerator is supposed to, by definition, by the way that the word works, refrigerate something again. So has a carrot that is fresh from the garden been refrigerated? So your refrigerator becomes a refrigerator and simultaneously a refrigerator. So, it's because of the disconnection with the mother goddess that we don't really, we have these complexities in our barbaric language. If somebody, who is talented in Greek would like to, take this and transcribe it into ancient Greek, I'm sure it will reveal something with the use of Alice that, wasn't intended by my intention. My intention is to show the arbitrariness of language, but you can also get something out of it.
Right. You guys are crazy. All right. Well, this was so much fun. It's such a fun book. It was great getting all your stories and listening to the amazing, crazy philosophy. So much fun. So,
we could go 2 more hours if you want.
Yeah,
I'm sure we could.
We could do this. We could do this all day.
So what I want to get from you guys is like, what is your final takeaway from writing these books? And what do you want your audience to know?
Well, I'm going to be an asshole real quick and say that Sloppy Dan is not capable of writing anything as in tune with the mother goddess as this, because he has never read Lucian. If you have read Lucian, you are more qualified to speak on any wisdom, any ancient mystery than Dan McCullen is. He just understands
He didn't even read the
Bible.
Syrian goddess.
He just understands the Bible And the Bible is pieces of paper with squiggly lines on it. Look, I wrote pieces of paper with squiggly lines on it. And
Yeah.
Danny, Sloppy Dan, is not capable of doing that.
This guy's got a PhD. I
He
haven't
has
watched
a
this
goddamn
episode.
PhD,
Yeah.
and he had the audacity to say that Amon doesn't know what he's talking about, and then get tricked into admitting that he has never read Lucian. I gotta give it to Danny Jones. Shout out to that motherfucker, because he was able to trick him into admitting.
Do you think he did it intentionally or just
the
by the
muse
muse
delivered?
Yeah, the
Whatever
muse
that dude
he's a conduit.
He's friends with Ammon now, this Danny guy, so
Uh-huh.
he knows a little bit. And if he's really interested, he can pick up on a lot. The muse is powerful.
If Danny wants to send me out to Florida to come talk about the Towel of Minerva, I will happily come out and chill with him and talk about the Towel of Minerva for 2 hours.
I was just going to say
he can put
that
all of the manscaping fucking ads that he wants into it. I won't take a penny. Right? I'll take a free trip out to Florida and chill with him and talk about the Towel of Minerva, because I think the fact that he's read Lucian puts him into a headspace where he's able to actually understand some of the nuance and sort of undo some of the things that he has done by platforming some of the people that he's platformed. Right. I think having Amon and having Neil, is a huge contribution to the mother goddess. The thing is that, Eris is the true mother goddess. Everyone else is a pale imitation of her. Okay. And she doesn't actually care. So, she understands the discourse and the fact that everybody is simultaneously in a state of past, present, and future at one time. So a lot of the annoying things where she puts all of this stuff out there and then forces all of these knuckleheads to reveal themselves as being knuckleheads. Let the knuckleheads reveal themselves and do whack-a-mole. All right. And just whack-a-mole them as they pop their stupid little heads up, and you can bark at them and you can bark and bark and bark. And then they pop their heads up and you whack-a-mole. All right. That's the most effective way.
Can we just say we were watching Danny and Amon, what was on Friday? And him and I both were like, oh, you two are like, because I never read the Bible. Danny he seems to be coming into this type of stuff, and every time I'm introduced to this world, every time I have to Google every other word out of you guys' mouth, because I don't know what any of this stuff means. I really don't. And I go, is that true? That's really in, and I go, that's really in the Bible? And I have to be like, holy shit, that's in the Bible. You're right. Like I have no idea.
I inherited a Bible that had Mark 14, 51, 52 already circled with the only fucking margin note was what? Question mark? And then Mark 14, 51, 52 scribbled. Like the muse delivers when you let her. I'm just saying that. And I also invented Rickrolling. So let the muse deliver, commune with the muse. Sometimes it's iguana ducks. Sometimes it's golden apples. Sometimes it's three-headed doggos. But no one can ever play a trick on you, because you who have watched this understand the true answer to the mystery. And the question that you need to ask anybody who speaks about the mystery is, how many penises does Cerberus have? You, who now has ears to hear, understands that Cerberus does not have any penises, and that is a trick question.
Love it. Well, this was so much fun, guys. Okay, everyone, make sure you go to the links below. You'll see a link to Skobie's website where you can purchase the books. You can also pick them up on Amazon.com. Anything else you guys want to promote that's coming up, or anything you want to say before we end it?
Oh, if you're if you want to come to the Whaling City on Friday, we're doing a book release party. We're celebrating Volume 3 at a really cool bookstore called the Golden Owl.
The Golden Owl.
Yep, the owls are not what they seem. So come hang out with us on Friday in person. Meet us. I'll give you a signed copy of the book. If you contributed to the book and you want to drive all the way out to the Whaling City, you're more than welcome some stage time as a special guest. We got a couple of stand-up comedians, a couple of artists doing music, and then my brother and I are, talking about the book, and we're doing some reading and stuff. So come hang out with the Moon and sketch the Cataclysm, and me and Johnny if you're in the Whaling City.
Amazing. That's awesome. So I hope if people can go and pick up the book, and I hope that if you are in the Whaling City, you go say hi to Johnny and Mandy. So thank you, everyone. This was so much fun. Again, pick up Volume 3, The Towel of Minerva, on Amazon. It's a lot of fun. It's hilarious. Worth checking out. All right, everyone. Peace and love, and we'll talk to Mandy and Johnny again soon. Take care.